Chapter 850. The elves made the arrangements to complete the mission as soon as the plantation was built. After returning from the Moon Slayer tribe, List had let his guard down. He would often patrol around on the invisible dragon and no longer hide himself. Up until now, Blazing Island had yet to build a dock. All the knights, craftsmen, serfs, and spellcasters were unable to leave after arriving. After all, the Great Maelstrom teleportation formation was a one-way one. The ships of Durut Red Apricot's fleet were basically stranded at the mouth of the Great Maelstrom River, unable to return without supplies. Therefore, there was almost no means of communication between this large island and the outside world other than the strictly vetted magic platforms. They could not even establish trade with the neighboring Tulip Islands. The Tulip family had just established a foothold on the island and had yet to establish a small town. It would probably take a long time before they could trade with Blazing Island. Therefore, even if the news of List riding a dragon was exposed, it would only settle on Blazing Island. A spellcaster walked into Kenley's office and reported, "President Kenley, these are the records of our interrogation of the listener of the Holy Tribe. There are some suspicious points that need to be pointed out." Kenley was editing the new translation of the Moon language. Without raising her head, she asked, "What are the suspicious points?" The listener mentioned a dragon. He said that they were sent here by a dragon, and that a crystal dragon would suddenly disappear. The spellcaster tried to describe it more accurately. "He seems to be talking about the dragon that Her Highness rode, but it doesn't seem to be the same as the fire dragon, Leo. I don't know if the listener is lying." After listening, Kenley put down the quill in her hand, and her expression suddenly became serious. "Put down Manzano, leave the records with me. As for the dragon that the listener mentioned, I will personally verify it with Her Highness. You don't have to worry about it. Also, don't discuss it in private." "Yes, President Kenley." After Manzano left, Kenley picked up the interrogation records and said, "Her Highness sure has a lot of secrets. This new dragon must be the invisible dragon that Master Acheroids once mentioned, right?" Master was the title that the magicians used to refer to a chi. Because a chi was not only a magic shooter, but also an arcane art tutor, her status was respected. Invisible dragon. Kenley narrowed her eyes and thought. She had looked up information on this subject and knew that the invisible dragon was a legendary mystical dragon of the sacred dragon sequence. It could produce space rings. Kenley had seen the rings on List and Achi's hands, and she guessed that they were space rings. She had also seen the two of them suddenly take out items. Therefore, she was already convinced of the existence of the invisible dragon and guessed that Achi's magic technique plan was able to progress so quickly by relying on the invisible dragon's mysterious ability. Fire dragon, formless dragon, this dragon knight from a small island nation. Perhaps he really is the son of glory those night knights are shouting for. The era of wizards is long gone, the weave has already withered. The Dragon Knight is the true ruler. But what does this have to do with me? I just want to research magic." He burst into laughter. Kenley flipped through the interrogation records and began to summarize the contents of the interrogation. She had come all the way from the distant Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom to Inferno Island. What she craved the most was magic and the truth itself. What did the worldly power struggles, wars, and killings have to do with her? After becoming a wizard, her surname was no longer Magic Elephant, but Truth. Not only had Kenley guessed the existence of the invisible dragon, but many other knights had also guessed it. Orders of chivalry took a nap on the way to capture the Moon Killer natives, and 2 knights went to a distant place to relieve themselves. All knights who landed on Inferno Island had developed good hygiene habits and no longer urinated or defecated anywhere. "I've seen His Highness riding a different dragon. I've known it for a long time. I still remember the roar of the dragon when we were transporting the materials on the frame ship when we passed through the Great Maelstrom teleportation array. I heard it very clearly. It was a sharp, ear-piercing, and intimidating sound. There's also a huge dragon's might. I remember it now. But what kind of dragon was that? I don't know. In short, His Highness is the Son of Glory favored by the Night Glory. There is no doubt about this. As long as we follow His Highness closely, we will become glorious nobles sooner or later. The two did not know that not far from them, Cross Buckthorn, the leader of the Orders of Chivalry, was also relieving himself. A moment later, Cross returned to the Orders of Chivalry and chatted with another leader, Durut Red Apricot. I just heard another knight discussing His Highness Dragon. They were discussing how many dragons His Highness has. Durut replied in a somewhat clumsy serpentine. Even in private, these knights from the Eagle Kingdom, who were used to speaking in the wind language, began to speak in serpentine according to List's request. That's right. The knight's curiosity about dragons will never diminish. However, they are not the only ones curious. We are the same. That's right. Who would have thought that His Highness not only has one dragon, but two? Together with His Excellency Achilles, the nation of fire will be unprecedentedly powerful in the future. That's why there is a saying in my hometown, don't mourn for a lost dog. It may bring another dog back. We were captured in the middle of the sea. Who would know that we weren't abandoned by the glory of the night, but that we were deeply cared for by the glory of the night? Durut said and looked at Cross. Especially you. Crossing through the great maelstrom teleportation array once, you were promoted from a viscount to a count. If your former colleagues knew about this, they would be jealous of you. Cross smiled proudly. His Highness is generous. It is my honor to follow him. Some people were secretly happy that List had multiple dragons, while others were frowning. Blue Dragon Island, Blue Sky Palace. The Sapphire Grand Duke's temples were already graying. He was aging faster than expected. At this moment, he was looking at eldest Prince Anthony with a solemn expression. Is what Angela said true? It shouldn't be false. Meopel admitted that List has 3 dragons after getting drunk. Among them, it has already been confirmed that the Fire Dragon and the Eagle Kingdoms lost light green gemstone dragon. As for the other dragon, Meopel isn't clear. As for Marquis Messiro, Angela simply couldn't get any information out of him. Although Messiro's talent is trash and his character isn't outstanding, he still inherited the shrewdness of the Taro family. Angela doesn't have the ability to get information out of him. The Grand Duke knocked on the table. This time, Angela delivered a letter to the family and made a great contribution. Later on her birthday, send a great sprite. Father, do we need to send a great sprite? Anthony was a bit reluctant. Even the dragon-rearing family didn't have many great sprites. The Grand Duke sighed. Do you think a great sprite is just a reward? That's to show the goodwill of the Sapphire family. I have studied List for a long time. Although he is young, he can't be treated as a young person. He has a strong purpose in doing things, and each of his actions has a purpose. If List knew that his unreliable thoughts and actions were praised by the Grand Duke, he would probably blush in shame. He really didn't have a purpose in doing things. Of course, releasing the news of 3 dragons was intentional. The Grand Duke's words couldn't be considered an exaggeration. Chapter 851. Only the Sapphire Grand Duke and his heir, Anthony, knew where the Sapphire family was headed. List, who was more than 7,000 kilometers away, was not clear. He was very busy and had no time to pay attention to the situation outside the Flame Archipelago. Of course, a lot of information was still pouring into him. The rats organized by Xavier Oxdung and the blood servants managed by Mary Dawn were his 2 eyes hidden in the shadows. The rats were mainly responsible for inquiring about the internal information of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and more to protect the territory from infiltration by foreign forces. The blood servants were dispatched to the Eagle Kingdom and the Steel Ridge Kingdom, mainly to lurk and wait for major movements to be discovered before giving an early warning. However, the current situation of the Sapphire family was stable, the Eagle Kingdom was busy withdrawing to maintain stability, and the Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Kingdom were at war. No one had time to pay attention to the Flame Archipelago. The fleet of the Pinecone family has arrived at the mouth of the river Whirlpool. I'll go there myself and arrange the development work of the Pinecone family. List received a message from the knight and made some arrangements. Let Viscount Vernal take an orders of chivalry and 5,000 serfs to the mouth of the river Whirlpool. From Firewood Town to the mouth of the river Whirlpool, the orders of chivalry could take the sloop that had just been launched at the dock. The ship went smoothly. Although it was not fast, it was better to save physical strength. After calculating the time, Vernal Inc. should have already arrived at the mouth of the river Whirlpool with the orders of chivalry. List rode the invisible dragon bard and set off to meet the Pinecone family that followed him. Boom! Arriving above the camp, List jumped directly from the back of the invisible dragon. His figure slowly appeared after landing. This had become his standard appearance. He always liked to play with this kind of low-key and luxurious abrupt atmosphere. Your Highness! The orders of chivalry in the garrison camp saluted when they saw List coming out of the dust. They were already used to it. List patted the dust on his cloak. At this time, Vernal and Roland Pinecone had already come out to greet him. Your Highness! List. Uncle, did everything go well on this voyage? List motioned for the two of them not to be too polite, and then asked Viscount Roland cordially. The Pinecone family had already followed him, and their status was confirmed to be his followers, so in terms of etiquette, List had already become the Lord of Roland. Thanks to the navigators you sent and the wind and water calming beads, we encountered 4 storms along the way, but we survived all of them without much loss, Viscount Roland replied with lingering fear in his heart. Ever since he decided to send out the expedition fleet to search for the new island, List had entrusted the Guild of Magic to mass-produce the wind-calming Divine Pearl and the water-calming Divine Pearl to protect the safety of the sailing fleet. The sea was merciless. Even the largest royal speedboat could not compete with the waves. However, the wind-calming Divine Bead and the water-calming Divine Bead could calm the threat posed by the wave. It had to be said that in a world full of magic, there would always be a magical way to deal with it. It's good that you arrived safely, List comforted him. At this time, he saw that behind Viscount Roland, there was a young, slightly chubby knight. It was Viscount Roland's youngest son and List's cousin, Raleigh Pinecone. The other cousin, Russell, stayed in the family territory to deal with the handover of some territory and did not come along. The womenfolk of the Pinecone family also did not come along. List. Raleigh wanted to greet him, but he was a little fearful. At that time, when he was still the Baron of the Flower Town, he and List could still talk and laugh, and even show off the topaz pendant his grandfather had given him. But when List became a Dragon Knight, he gradually felt that this cousin of his was a stranger, and he slowly developed a sense of awe. In particular, he often heard his father and mother admonish him on how to face the Dragon Knight. The difference in status stemming from the knight system deepened Raleigh's sense of inferiority and fear. His cousin, whom he once teased and only received a tattered letter from his grandfather as a gift, had grown into one of the top figures in the world in terms of power, strength, and influence. He was no longer the little cousin who was disliked by the family in his memory. Cousin Raleigh. List walked over and patted Raleigh on the shoulder with a smile. Not bad, you have become an Earth Knight. Although he was not close to Aunt Melinda's relatives and had very little contact with them, but he still released enough cordiality. After all, the other party had already sought refuge with him. Raleigh smiled awkwardly. I haven't even become an elite, I'm still far from it. If you hone yourself more, then becoming an elite Earth Knight will not be a problem. Seeing that Raleigh was really nervous, List no longer forced himself to reminisce with his cousin. He turned back and continued to talk to Viscount Roland. I have already planned for the Pinecone family's arrangements. Uncle will develop here at the mouth of the whirlpool and will be responsible for the trade with the Tulip Island in the future. I will be responsible for the trade with the Tulip Island? Yes, mainly because the two islands share resources. The Tulip family will go all out to develop the Tulip Island, but they definitely don't have enough labor. I will support them with some serfs. You don't have enough serfs, do you? Haha, it was not enough in the past, but now there are too many serfs. There are a large number of indigenous tribes on Flame Island, all of which are a source of high-quality serfs. Because there are too many of them, my temporary night followers are not enough, and I may not be able to digest so many serfs. This is really exciting news. Viscount Roland hesitated a little and said, "Can the Pinecone family also buy a batch of serfs?" "There is no need to buy them. You can catch them yourself, but pay attention to capturing serfs at the lowest cost. Don't cause too much unnecessary killing. Flame Island is too big. If you want to fully develop it, you need a large number of serfs. Capturing all the indigenous tribes is still not enough." At this stage, there were too many indigenous people to digest, but when the night class developed and grew, the number of indigenous people would become scarce. Therefore, every indigenous person killed was a loss of resources. Vernal added, "With the consent of His Highness, our orders of chivalry rarely use the method of capturing serfs. We mainly recruit serfs by luring the ancient mages. When most of the indigenous tribes are attracted to serf life, even the ancient mages can't stop the annexation and obediently work for us." Countless years of forest life had seriously degraded the intelligence of the ancient mages. They could not distinguish the naked nibbling of the foreign night. Even if they sold themselves, they would still have to count the night's money. Although these ancient mages' spellcasting level was not high, the magic effect was good. After unified management and continuous brainwashing, they could probably serve as pioneers in the development of the forest. They were much better than the black uncles in Africa. At least the Moonslayers were not lazy and would work hard. After all, the bloodline of their ancestors came from the Moon Empire, not from guerrillas. Immediately, the Pinecone family took root at the mouth of the Whirlpool River. The family was an old Viscount family, and they were relatives of the Taro family. They had accumulated a lot of wealth. The knight who was willing to follow, plus the temporarily recruited Earth Knight, totaled more than 300. There were more than 800 trainee knight, and the first batch of 1,000 serfs to migrate. This was not a small help for the development of Flame Island. Chapter 852. It was mid-November. The Potato Sprite Cookies potato plantation had been built long ago. In addition to List coaxing Cookie to plant a lot of potato sprouts, Orders of Chivalry also found a lot of wild potatoes from the wilderness and planted them all in the plantation. In the next few days, various sprite worm stalks landed and plantations were built one after another. Orders of Chivalry attacked many large tribes and rescued 8 sprite worms in succession, which were handed over to List for a contract. The plantations were also quickly planned. All the plantations were very large, but the plants in the plantations were actually very sparse. But in any case, the smoke mission was successfully completed. Mission completed. Reward: discovery of a new island. The reward had already been issued, but List had yet to receive the exploration fleet's report. He had no time to care about the exploration fleet's report because the new mission had already been issued. Mission: Achi has perfected all the detailed steps of the Magic Gate experiment. Next, it is time to witness a miracle. However, behind the miracle is countless sweat. Please assist Achi in completing the Magic Gate experiment. Reward: Achi's new elemental embodiment. The Magic Gate experiment is finally about to begin. List was not surprised at all. Achi often talked to him about the progress of the Magic Gate experiment, so he was very clear about it. He was also ready to work for the Magic Gate together with the invisible dragon bud. He pondered for a moment about the reward of the smoke mission. Achi's new elemental embodiment, what will it be? She has already grasped the water element and the ice element, and the target for her third elemental embodiment is the earth element. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be the earth element. Soon. He had already arrived at the wizard tower and saw Achi, who was writing notes. Achi, when will the magic gate experiment begin? Achi is writing down the details of the magic gate experiment. When the time comes, I will need Big Brother and Bud's cooperation. It will take about a week to rehearse. For the time being, we will begin the magic gate experiment a week later. Achi's face was a lot of fatigue, and her eyes were bloodshot, which was rare. For the sake of the magic gate experiment, she had hardly slept recently. List was very distressed. Since the theory has been completed, there is no need to rush the experiment. After writing down the details of the experiment, you should take a good rest first. You are not allowed to work with such intensity again. Compared to magic or experiments, your body is the most important, understand? Achi smiled sweetly. And Achi understands. Rubbing her blue hair, he was in a trance for a moment, as if Achi was still the soft and weak little siren, not the great magic shooter who accepted the pilgrimage of the sorcerers. In the end, Achi wrote, detailed operation of the magic gate experiment overnight. After handing it over to List, she spent some time explaining it to List in detail before List forced her to rest. Holding the notebook, List leaned against the formless dragon bard and read it carefully. The experiment seemed whimsical, but the details were very detailed. The main thing was to open up the nodes of two material spaces and then connect them by tearing the weave apart. The operation was a little complicated, but Bard's ability was enough to complete it. He opened the two magic doors. Just as he was familiarizing himself with the details of the operation, the reward for the smoke mission came late. Finally, they received the good news from the exploration fleet. They had discovered an island 500 kilometers west of the Flame Archipelago. After the joint exploration of the three exploration fleets, they discovered that it was a new archipelago. Although the area of the island was not big, it was probably smaller than the Whirlpool Archipelago, but the geographical location was good. It was in the direction of the Flame Archipelago to the continent, which would shorten the sailing distance. Order Captain Yevich to continue leading the exploration fleet to the legendary continent and open up a route for the Flame Archipelago. Also, investigate the information of the continent's coast. Find out the distance between the Flame Archipelago and the continent, and find out which kingdom this part of the coastline belongs to. After a pause, List ordered again, tell Yevich that when he reaches the coastline of the continent, he will be promoted to Earl. Yes, Your Highness, Lucy and the twins replied. They performed well as operators and were worthy of List's trust. Not long after learning from Achi, they learned ordinary magic and advanced from their status as magic apprentices to ordinary sorcerers. They were becoming more and more qualified to be Achi's assistant. A week passed in the blink of an eye. Achi, who had rested well, began to host the magic gate experiment. List and Bud had already memorized the operation manual and knew all the details like the back of their mind. It was similar to the previous node observation experiment, where Achi set up a large-scale magic formation. A total of 2 had to be set up, and they chose to set them up in the north and south directions of the swirling mountain. After the first magic formation was activated, List and Bard became one with the dragon and quickly used the power of the magic formation to break through the power of an adult dragon. Then, they forcefully opened up the node of the material boundary. They then rushed to the second magic formation and forcefully opened up the node. At this time, the human and dragon followed the established steps of the experiment and entered the world outside the material boundary from the node. In the crystal white vision, the 2 adjacent nodes were especially clear. Bard, get to work. Build a magic channel between the nodes, complete the connection between the nodes, tear apart the magic net, and make a real space channel. List's mind was clear. Without any delay, he controlled the invisible dragon Bard and began to release space magic, using the invisible dragon itself as a bridge to connect the two nodes. After the magic was connected, they could feel the attraction between the two nodes. Let's begin. Bard spread his wings and suddenly clawed at the pitch-black void with his claws, grabbing the space magic that had already formed a line. Then, he flew outwards with all his strength. The magic threads were constantly pulled and pulled, pulling the two nodes in the same direction and creating circles of ripples in the world outside the material boundary. In the area of the ripples, the faint traces of the magic net could be seen. This is the moment. Explode. List keenly sensed the movement of the magic net. The human and dragon erupted and pulled with all their strength. The next moment, as if something in the void had shattered, the space magic threads quickly pulled out a tubular channel. And this tubular channel just happened to pass through the magic net, already piercing through the magic net. However, unlike the wormhole space of the Great Maelstrom magic teleportation formation, this channel was not stable. As the magic net continued to compress, it soon showed signs of collapse. The two material nodes also began to become unstable. Let's go, Bard. Let's test out the smoothness of the channel. List did not waste any time. The human and dragon quickly flew into the newly formed channel. To the left was the magic formation at the south of the Maelstrom Mountain, and to the right was the magic formation at the north. He chose to go left first. The spatial channel was very short, and in the blink of an eye, they passed through the ripples and arrived in the real material world. It was indeed the entrance to the magic formation at the south of the Maelstrom Mountain. At this moment, the entrance flickered with a dark blue light. No matter how one looked at it, it was collapsing inward, forming a vortex door. List did not waste any time. He once again rushed into the spatial channel and entered the entrance. Cracks had already appeared in the channel under the constant pressure of the magic net. The human and dragon did not dare to stay any longer. They directly passed through the channel as fast as they could and rushed out from another exit. Suddenly, they arrived at the entrance to the magic formation at the north of the Maelstrom Mountain. Just as he rushed out, the dark blue light at the entrance did not last long before it suddenly exploded. All the light disappeared into nothingness, and the magic formation also collapsed at this moment. Many precious magic materials lost their luster at this moment. Their magic power was exhausted, and they became waste. However, List laughed. He jumped down from the back of the invisible dragon and laughed heartily. Achi, the experiment is a success. We have successfully opened the magic gate. In front of the magic formation, Achi's eyes were like whirlpools. It was as if she had seen through List's two transits and seen the situation in the spatial channel. Chapter 853. This chapter is to congratulate Boss Jean Go. It's only one chapter for now, and will be followed up with 5 chapters. Thank you for your continued support. Big Brother, Achi seems to have captured some strange information. Achi's pupils were still whirlpools, which was the look of the super magic eyes. What strange information? List asked casually, still immersed in the shock and joy of opening a magic gate. It's a special magic composition. It's very strange, just like the space magic Achi has been studying. It's really similar. It's very similar to the magic information on Bard's body. Achi said and looked at Bard, who stuck his head out. Big Brother, can you ask Bard to condense space magic? Bard could already understand the human language, so Achi could directly command him. She believed that he would be willing to do as she said. However, Achi was a considerate little siren and respected List, the invisible dragon's knight. No problem. List immediately used the dragon heart code to communicate with Bard. Bard opened his mouth and spat out a dragon's breath. The strong space magic was like a cloud of white mist, constantly cutting the space. When the stones on the ground touched the white mist, they instantly shattered into powder silently. The dragon's breath was more powerful than the little fire dragon Leo's high-temperature dragon breath. After a moment, Achi nodded. "Big brother, it's done." "How is it?" List asked. "It's confirmed that it's the nature of space magic. Big brother, Achi has already mastered the special operation method of magic particles. It seems that she can already condense space magic." As she spoke, she raised her left hand and stretched out a slender, white finger. A white light bloomed on the fingertip. Then, she gently stretched out her finger and pointed at the void, and the finger slowly disappeared. However, after List cast magic eyes, he clearly saw her finger emitting white mana feedback. Her finger had reached into the material boundary and could hide like the invisible dragon. Seeing this, List suddenly realized that the so-called reward of the smoke mission, Achi's new elemental incarnation, was not the earth elemental incarnation. It was the space elemental incarnation. Sure enough, when he summoned the smoke mission, he found that the magic gate experiment was completed, and the mission was also completed. Mission completed. Reward: Achi's space elemental incarnation. So powerful! Since ancient times, there has never been a high mage who could release space magic and obtain space elemental incarnation. That might not be the case. The Great Maelstrom Teleportation Array is a masterpiece of the ancient high mages. Maybe someone among them grasped space magic. In any case, my Achi is a peerless genius with frightening talent. He was extremely shocked. List did not show it. In front of Achi, he still had to maintain the good demeanor of a dragon knight, a scholar, a king, and a brother. He just smiled and clapped his hands. Incredible, Achi. You can actually control spatial magic. Given time, I'm afraid that you will be able to open a magic door all by yourself and travel through the entire world. Achi withdrew her finger. It was still very strenuous for her to maintain spatial elemental incarnation. Now that Achi has obtained spatial elemental incarnation and has a much deeper understanding of space, the magic gate will soon be truly realized. Big Brother has the invisible dragon bard, and Achi can also travel through space with Big Brother. List ruffled her hair. That's right. Bard also let out an excited cry from the side. This invisible dragon was quite proud of itself. It was because it saw Achi's terrifying talent that it condescended to let List start 2 spiritual battles, and finally lowered the standard to become a dragon knight. Its purpose was to stay by Achi's side and use her ability to guide the way. And the subsequent development was just as it had envisioned. It was no longer afraid of getting lost when traveling through space. Big Brother, Achi needs time to adapt and practice space elemental incarnation. But before that, there is still information about the magic gate that Big Brother needs to complete. Just say it. In the magic gate experiment, the biggest restraining condition is that the weave shrinks, which will compress the newly formed spatial channel, causing the node entrance to collapse. To resist the weave's compression, a lot of magic power must be consumed. This is not realistic. No magic array can compare to the weave in terms of magic power. Indeed. So, have you thought of any way? We can directly look for natural nodes. Achi nodded. Natural nodes? Yes, the entrance and exit of the Great Maelstrom Magic Teleportation Array are natural nodes. It should be that the ancient magic shooters found the natural nodes and connected the 2 nodes, so that they could engrave the wormhole space eternally and resist the compression of the weave. Big Brother, as long as you find more natural nodes, Achi can also set up an eternal magic gate. I understand. I will find more natural nodes with Bard. The first natural node that came to List's mind was the entrance to the ruins of the Moon People's sacred mountain. Although the Hourglass Valley was a bit dangerous, it should not be difficult to open an exit. Once the magic gate was opened, the vast area of the Flame Archipelago would be more closely connected. Achi continued, There is another problem with natural nodes that needs to be paid attention to. The process of connecting different nodes may not be smooth. The Great Maelstrom Magic Teleportation Array is an example. The repulsive force of the wormhole space is unidirectional, so it can only be used for one-way teleportation. To establish a two-way teleportation, two natural nodes with very high compatibility may be needed. I will try to find more natural nodes, and then slowly choose the right natural node to build a magic gate. In fact, it doesn't matter if it's unidirectional. At worst, we can just go around and make other parallel reverse magic gates. List's idea was very simple. A unidirectional magic gate was about A can only go to B, and B can only go to C, but then find a magic gate that C can only go to A, so B can return to A through C. Achi also understood this. Yes. Returning to Infernal City. List's excitement had not yet subsided. He was complacently thinking about how to find natural nodes and build a magic gate. At this time, the smoke in front of him slowly appeared and condensed into a paragraph of serpentines. It was the latest smoke mission. Mission: Leo has not returned to the Black Horse Island territory for a long time. Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple are growing slowly, but they cannot dispel the loneliness in the heart of the Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Sprite Infant. As the master of the sprite, why not solve its troubles? Reward: a jade stone mine. Jade vein. Chapter 854. Because of the magic door experiment, the magic materials in Firewood Town were almost consumed, and a batch was urgently needed to be replenished from the fire territory. After List explained, he and Achi set off to return to Black Horse Island. Although Achi could switch part of the space elemental incarnation, it had not been officially developed, so the invisible dragon could not be wrapped in space magic and could not accompany List through the maelstrom. So the two still rode the dragon to the seaside, and then changed to Achi's shell. Of course, they first flew to the endless volcanoes on the invisible dragon and found Leo. Then they rode Leo to the sea. As a dragon knight, without a dragon, his combat effectiveness would be seriously reduced, and it would be troublesome in case of danger. Only when Leo was in the form of magic could he have enough confidence not to fear any ambush. In fact, after the war between the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Kingdom, he was guarding against one thing: the Eagle Kingdom might be accumulating strength to prepare for revenge. The royal family of the Eagle Kingdom would certainly be unwilling to let a newborn dragon knight ruin their decades of preparation for the Battle of Dragon Slaying. Moreover, the light green gemstone dragon was missing in the sea, and List was quite suspicious. After List deliberately released the news of the light green gemstone dragon, it was no longer a suspicion, but a fact. Once the Eagle Kingdom is ready to retaliate, the scale of the Battle of Dragon Slaying will definitely not be small. At present, the Eagle Kingdom has 8 dragons, 5 of which have knight. The 5 vassal countries have 5 dragons, 2 of which have dragon knight. Although it is impossible to evacuate all the dragons from the border, if they are desperate, 4 or 5 dragon knight may be dispatched. After Sapphire Grand Duke declined this year's Development Order War, List had been thinking deeply about the possibility of the Eagle Kingdom's revenge. In any case, he had become a thorn in the side of the Eagle Kingdom. In the process of building the Fire Kingdom, sooner or later a battle of dragon slaying would break out to re-establish the Master of the Sea and a new order in this corner of the legendary continent. If I were the king of the Eagle Kingdom, I would definitely show weakness to the surrounding countries first, and then stabilize the internal forces. Then, I would choose a suitable time to gather all the Dragon Knight forces and launch a magnificent dragon-slaying battle to wash away my shame. Of course, the location of the Flame Archipelago was a mystery. Whether it was the Tulip family's fleet or the Pinecone family's fleet, the Flame Territory's navigator was in charge of leading the way. The others did not even know the location of the Flame Islands. If the Eagle Kingdom wanted to launch a dragon-slaying war, the best battlefield was still the Sapphire Islands and the Azure Sea. Therefore, when List returned to the Flame territory, there was still a certain degree of danger. This was also the reason why he had to bring Leo along. It was not to deliberately show off that he had a dragon. Leo would provide temporary support, and Achi would provide support from the sea. It was enough to ensure that he could escape any life-or-death situation. If the battle of dragon slaying could not kill him, the rest of the time would be his personal performance time. Unless the Eagle Kingdom wanted to perish together, they would absolutely be unable to face his retaliation. Anyway, the war of slaying the dragon might happen, or it might not. But no matter where he went, he had to have at least one dragon to accompany him. After tossing and turning, it was already December when he returned to Black Horse Island, and it would be New Year's Day in half a month. List did not know if he could spare time to spend this year's New Year's Day with the Tulip family. Both he and the Marquis of Oxdale were busy. He was developing the Flame Islands, and the Marquis of Oxdale was also busy developing the Tulip Island. The construction of the Oxdale territory had been idle. When the fire dragon descended from the sky with a wild dragon's might, the people of Black Horse Island already knew that their great dragon Night Lord had returned. Oh! When Butler Carter heard the roar of the fire dragon, he ignored the crystal tableware he was wiping in his hands and stood up excitedly. He shouted loudly, "Put down your work and tidy up your clothes. Servants and maids, quickly gather in the hall. Mrs. Morrison, check the list of maids. Tom, check the list of servants. Mr. Carter, is the Lord back?" Tom had been promoted to the head of the servants. The servant, who used to be responsible for carrying water, had skillfully taken on the job of assistant to Carter's butler. "Of course, cheer up, Tom. The Lord doesn't like the listless appearance of the servants." "Understood." In the corridor of the castle, Mrs. Morrison's voice gradually became louder. "Well, girls, put down the linen in your hands, tidy up your clothes, and gather in the hall downstairs. Don't hesitate, hurry up, you are the maids of Thorn Castle, the maids who serve the Dragon Knight Royal Highness." "Coming, Mrs. Morrison. Are my clothes a little wrinkled? Is the Lord back? I have never seen the Lord before. I'm so nervous." Just as the old and new servants were busy gathering to welcome the arrival of the Lord of Thorn Castle, in the square outside the castle, List and Achi jumped off the dragon's back together. Under the respectful salute of the knight, they walked towards the castle. Leo flew to the pile of rocks on the side of Thorn Castle. Originally, List promised to build a 100-meter-high stone platform for him, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was unrealistic. The weight of the stone platform itself was difficult to pile up to a height of 100 meters, so the stones produced by the Blizzard Beast squad were piled up casually and let Leo temporarily use it as a foothold. Clatter! 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 The Phoenix parasol tree was next to the pile of rock. The 3 fire dragon birds, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple, were sleeping in their nests in the tree. Suddenly, they woke up, let out a cheerful cry, flapped their wings, and flew towards Leo. The Phoenix parasol tree elf, Infant, who was in a daze on the Phoenix parasol tree, also saw the long-lost fire dragon descending from the sky and landing on the familiar pile of rocks. Screech! It flew up at once, but it was not arrogant enough to directly approach Leo, because it had already seen the 3 fire dragon birds, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple, being directly flashed away by Leo's wings. This fire dragon, which made it excited, had a wild and arrogant personality, and would not have any kind of affection just because they were familiar with each other. So Infant thought about it, turned around, and flew towards Thorn Castle. It was very clear that only one person could suppress Leo's evil thoughts, List. When Infant flew to the castle, the servants stood on both sides of the castle gate. Under the leadership of the 2 housekeepers, Mr. Carter and Mrs. Morrison, they bowed to welcome the return of their master. It was just that the original neat welcoming atmosphere was disturbed by a few elves. The thorn elf, Ella, put her hands on her waist and landed on List's head. She pointed at the elves flying around her and said, "Be honest with me, step back, wow. I'm talking to you, Goldthread elf, step back, hurry up. You're really a fox pretending to be a tiger." Infant slowly flew towards List. He was not afraid of the grumpy elf, Ella. They were all great elves, and no one was much more powerful than the other. It was just that the pea-elf, Ike, was addicted to rope and could not extricate herself. The giant algae elf was free and unfettered on the bottom of the sea and never participated in the disputes on the ground. The mangrove elf, Nami, rarely lived in the castle, and Infant himself was with the fire dragon bird all day long. This allowed Ella to dominate Thorn Castle and become a tyrant feared by countless elves. Chapter 855. I'm back, Annie. List greeted Annie, the phoenix parasol tree great elf. From the many messy elves' emotions, List could feel Annie's desire to be close to Leo. This was originally something that List wanted to solve, so he responded with a reassuring mood and waved his hand. All the sprites immediately followed behind him, chirping as they returned to Thorn Castle. "Ella, take them back to the worm room. I'll visit you later." "Whoa, Ella will beat up anyone who doesn't listen." Ella got List's order and immediately swaggered around. It turned out that Ella had become List's trusted subordinate. Otherwise, why would List choose it instead of the other great elves? Although List's original intention was that Ella was more irascible, the deterrence of a bully was always stronger. Under Ella's banishment, all the little elves had to fly along the corridor back to the worm room. Only Annie remained unmoved and still followed List. Annie could not wait to get close to Leo and sniff the sulphurous smell of fire. "Master, are you going to rest for a few days before leaving, or are you going to wait until after the New Year's Day?" Butler Carter waited for List to comfort the elves before asking. "I'll leave after a few days. It depends on the situation during the new year. I may not be able to return to Thorn Castle for the new year. If Master doesn't celebrate the new year at Thorn Castle, this year's new year will not have much of an atmosphere. The atmosphere of the first New Year's of Thorn Castle last year is nostalgic," Carter said regretfully. "Last year, the Taro family and the Tulip family celebrated the New Year's in Thorn Castle." List smiled. "Even if I don't come back in time, Thorn Castle will celebrate the new year as usual. Carter, you'll be responsible for letting the servants celebrate the new year together. Master has always been so kind." Mrs. Mawson came over with a cup of steaming hot milk tea. "This is freshly brewed Banpo milk. The steward of the cattle farm has just delivered a batch of fresh milk. This is the fresh milk from the cows, specially marked by the master." Banpo cattle were divided into different grades. The few cows that were directly infected from the embryonic stage belonged to the purebred dragon breed and had not yet reached the age of milk production. Although the adult cows that were directly infected were not pure enough, the quality of their milk was still very high, and it had always been List's exclusive milk. List took the cup and took a sip. Suddenly, the aroma of milk filled his mouth. "Well, I haven't had fresh Banpo milk for a long time. It makes me feel like I've returned to the leisure time of the past. Master, you've really been too busy this year." Gulp, gulp, gulp. List drank up a glass and a half of milk, then said with some emotion, "Yeah, it's been too busy this year. The 3 dragons had to be raised, and the Flame Island had to be developed. Thousands of things could not be separated from his maintenance. It seemed that from the moment he rode the fire dragon Leo, life was like a horse driven by a whip, galloping non-stop. He never stopped to enjoy a few days of undisturbed life without any trifles. After thinking about it, the poor days in Flower Town were the most pleasant. He dreamed of riding a dragon and patrolled the crops of the territory every day. Life was simple and he didn't have to think too much. Those days could no longer be returned. As a dragon knight, he carried the ambition of building a country. Since he had chosen this more difficult path, he must go on unswervingly. Mrs. Morrison asked the maid to prepare hot water. I'm going to take a bath later. Yes, master. Mr. Carter, get ready. There will be a banquet at Thorn Castle tonight. All officials on Black Horse Island are invited to attend. As you wish, master. After giving the order, Lys took Infant out of the castle and walked to Leo's resting place. The 3 fire dragon chicks were still circling around Leo, but they did not dare to call out anymore. Leo would not be polite to them just because they were Lyst's pets. If it weren't for Lyst's will that often killed the evil thoughts of the fire dragon, I'm afraid the 3 birds would have been stuffed in between Leo's teeth. Infant, go, I'll have a good chat with Leo. You can touch them if you want. Lyst smiled and patted Infant's head. Hey, thank you, Lyst. Infant flapped his transparent wings and couldn't wait to fly to Leo's side. He reached out and touched a scale, then took his hand back and smelled the sulfur smell on his hand. His expression suddenly became intoxicated. Leo was very upset. Although Infant was the size of a flea in his eyes, he still didn't like being approached by little things. List used the Dragon Heart Code to negotiate with him. Leo, I plan to move Infant to a place near the volcano where you train. In the future, when you come out to bask in the sun, let him touch you. Why would I allow a flea to touch my body? He's evolving into a dragon elf, which will be of great help to me. Isn't helping me the same as helping you? Think about it carefully. I need magic potions. Touch 10 potions at a time. You're robbing me. List stared at him. 1 potion at a time, no bargaining allowed. In the end, after Leo asked for a sky-high price and List sat on the ground and argued fiercely, 1 human and 1 dragon reached an agreement to touch 2 potions at a time. The once here meant a complete enjoyment, not just touching a scale once. Otherwise, with Infant's method of touching scales more than 10 times in a short period of time, List would be completely defeated in 2 days. After setting the price, Leo lay down on the pile of rocks and fell asleep, leaving Infant to continue touching and indulging in the process. Mission completed. Reward, a jade mine. Being intoxicated by the smell of the fire dragon, Infant's worries were all swept away. Lyst's smoke mission was also completed, and he got a jade mine. However, he didn't know where the jade mine was for the time being. It was probably somewhere on Flame Island. Only Infant continued to be intoxicated by Leo's smell. Lyst walked back while paying attention to the new smoke mission. After a long period of exploration, the masters of the Fire Dragon Brick Factory didn't figure out how to make porcelain. However, they found that limestone can be made into lime, but this lime doesn't have good adhesion and seems to lack a necessary ingredient. Why not help them solve this problem? Reward, the long-awaited cement. Cement had always been a product that List had been looking forward to. Although the territory had rubber that was 10 times stronger than cement, using rubber to build roads and houses was really overkill. Now that rubber was widely used in shipbuilding, equipment, containers, and other industries, it could be said to be a strategic material. He really couldn't bear to use rubber in construction. Therefore, cement was the best substitute, allowing rubber to be used in more valuable places. Finally going to develop cement. It's been a few years since the Fire Dragon Brick Factory was built, and it finally paid off. The Fire Dragon Brick Factory was a large workshop with a brick workshop, pottery workshop, charcoal workshop, and so on. It had been firing cement and porcelain according to Lyst's requirements. However, porcelain couldn't be fired well, and cement couldn't be made. Chapter 856. Lyst honestly didn't know much about lime and cement. He only knew that these things were calcined and were very common. But what was the connection between the two, or what was the composition, was not clear. But if I remember correctly, I once watched a documentary about China's contract to build the Mongolian NEI Railway in Africa. It mentioned the problem of cement production. Because of the lack of raw materials, Chinese experts eventually chose local volcanic ash as one of the raw materials for cement. When watching this documentary, Liszt was very proud. This was a great achievement of his motherland. What he remembered more was the production of cement. They could actually use volcanic ash to make cement. So, thinking of this, he immediately went to inspect the Fire Dragon brick factory and provided new ideas to the craftsmen in charge of developing cement. He asked them to mix lime and volcanic ash and try to see if they could develop cement. There was a lot of volcanic ash on Dodo Island, but the voyage of 800 kilometers was a bit far. Coral Island also had a weathered extinct volcano. Liszt had also looked for signs of magma, from which volcanic ash could be excavated. Liszt didn't need to worry about these mundane matters. He only needed to provide a general direction. In the following time, he teased the elves and patrolled the territory while waiting for a Chi to set up experiments and prepare magic materials for the mages of the Guild of Magic. The officials had prepared 10 large frame ships, filled with supplies and personnel, to be transported to Infernal City. December 10th. Ready to set off. Whoa, whoa! The thorn sprite, Ella, was very reluctant to let Liszt leave. Stay safe in the castle. Don't bully the little elves at will. When I build a castle and plantation in my new home, I will move you there. Remember to come early. Okay. Whoa. Ella let go of his hand and watched Liszt leave. Among all the great and little elves, it was the most emotional one. It was not known if it was because Liszt's thinking was very different from the people of this world, or because Ella itself was different. In short, among Liszt's many strange elves, Ella was still the most special. 10 large frame ships set sail, including the frame ship that had been parked under the Thorn Castle. The cabin of this ship was sealed with the Emerald Dragon's hind legs. Now that the Infernal City was established on the Infernal Island, he decided to bring the Emerald Dragon's hind legs to the Infernal City and hide them in the cellar of the new castle that was about to be completed. Precious treasures related to the Mind Fruit Tree and the mystifying dragon's Mind Fruit should be kept by his side. He returned to Fireforge City and found the formless dragon Bard, who had already returned. Liszt didn't stop to rest. He rode on Bard and sent the little fire dragon Leo, the Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Elf Infant, and the 3 fire dragon birds that followed him to the endless volcanoes. Leo quickly transformed from his magic form into a body of flesh and blood. Then, he plunged into the boiling magma of the volcano of Doomsday. Liszt brought Infant to look for a suitable place. Finally, they found a dormant volcano halfway up the mountain. Infant happily planted his worm stalk. The tall Phoenix Parasol Tree uprooted from the ground and put a nest on it. Goldie, Lil Red, and Lil Purple immediately clucked around the Phoenix Parasol Tree. Infant, I'll let Leo come here often to rest. You can touch it to your heart's content. Liszt, you're so nice. Infant was sincerely grateful to Liszt. If it weren't for Liszt's help, he wouldn't have been able to get close to his favorite dragon. Help me take care of these 3 birds. Don't worry, Liszt. Goldie, Lil Red, and Lil Purple listen to me, Infant said confidently. He wasn't bragging. As early as the 2 adult fire dragon birds, they built a nest on the Phoenix Parasol Tree and didn't hurt Infant, which showed Infant's ability. The 3 birds were now very dependent on Infant. Apart from Leo, they were closest to Infant. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps it was mutual attraction. Protect yourself. My forces haven't extended here yet. Although Leo's draconic aura covers the endless volcanoes, you still have to be careful. Goldie, Lil Red, and Lil Purple will help me fight. Although they were young birds, the 3 fire dragon birds had already learned the fire magic engraved in their bloodline, Flame Slash. With a flap of their wings, they instantly condensed flames into blades with shocking power. It was a piece of cake to deal with low-level World of Warcraft. Even if it was against mid-level World of Warcraft, it wouldn't be a problem. As for high-level World of Warcraft, within the range of Leo's draconic aura, no high-level World of Warcraft would casually invade. Therefore, Ainfint's safety was basically not a problem. Bard, let's go. The invisible dragon flapped its wings and quickly entered the material boundary. Then, it forcefully tore the boundary open and stepped into the world outside of the material world. Crystal White Orbit activated and activated mana recovery positioning. While flying, it searched for possible natural node. At this moment, List suddenly had an idea. Can the effect of mana recovery positioning be strengthened? The effect of the Chi secret technique Magic Eye, after fusing with the dragon, obtained the dragon's eye trajectory and the crystal white orbit with distinct levels. He just thought of a point. In addition to Magic Eye, he also had two Chi secret techniques, Aura Decay and Spiral Rotation. Aura Decay didn't play much of a role in the Dragon Knight stage, so he had abandoned it. Spiral Rotation also didn't have a good effect on the Dragon Knight, so he hadn't practiced it for a long time. The spiral circulation is a kind of combat aura circulation technique. If I use it on Bard's spatial magic and search through the spiral magic radiation, will I be able to pinpoint the feedback of the boundary of matter more precisely? Once he thought of it, he immediately practiced the spiral circulation with Bard. Anyway, it was just a try. He wouldn't lose anything if he failed, but if he succeeded, he would gain a lot. Soon, spiral rotation fused with mana recovery positioning. The radiation of spatial magic appeared in a spiral shape, but the effect didn't seem to be too obvious. In the world outside the material boundary, there was still no response from the surroundings. It was basically the same as the previous feedback from mana recovery positioning. Did I fail? Just as he was about to give up, suddenly, there was a trace of a special fluctuation in the distance. The man and the dragon were shocked at the same time. They had found a natural node. However, List didn't control Bard to approach. Instead, he signaled Bard to stop using spiral rotation and directly use ordinary mana recovery positioning to lock. In this way, he suddenly found that the special fluctuation that could be felt before could no longer be felt. Bard, try using spiral rotation again. Woo! Spiral rotation was used. Soon, the special fluctuation was once again detected by mana recovery positioning. Although the fluctuation was very weak, the location was very clear. Go! List was overjoyed. He was really a genius. He had developed another powerful skill. He directly called this upgraded version of mana recovery positioning skill spiral positioning. The birth of spiral positioning meant that the value of Chi secret techniques had returned to his field of vision. Originally, when the Magic Eye fused with the dragon and exerted a strong effect, he had a huge desire for Chi's secret technique. However, the weakening of the aura and the dispensable spiral rotation made him waver in his belief in Chi's secret technique. Except for the special Magic Eye, other Chi secret techniques seemed to be useless to the Dragon Knight. Therefore, his motivation to search for Chi secret techniques gradually slackened. Now, spiral rotation made Chi secret techniques of great value again. Chapter 857. The natural node was hidden quite deeply, but under the powerful search ability of the spiral positioning, it still had nowhere to hide. The invisible dragon quickly approached the natural node, and then began to rely on its talent to break the material boundary of the natural node, which was not thick in the first place. The moment the boundary was torn, List saw the scenery outside. It was a secluded environment with lush trees. When he and the invisible dragon completely flew out of the natural node, it suddenly became clear that this was the inside of the crater of an extinct volcano. After flying out of the volcano, the view was high, and not far to the left was the volcano where the Phoenix parasol tree was located. There were 9 active volcanoes and many extinct volcanoes, most of which had not been named. This extinct volcano also did not have a name. The natural node is inside the crater. In this case, transportation will be a bit inconvenient, unless the volcanic tunnel is opened. Well, if Achi chooses this place as one of the magic gates, I'll organize a group of ancient mages to bombard it and try to open the volcanic tunnel as soon as possible. Thorny ironwood, rubber water, and the cement that was about to be developed, the ability to build tunnels was already available. Although there were no large shield tunneling machines in this world, there was magic. Mage's magic was not good in combat, but if it was converted to civilian use, the effect was obvious. Even if the ancient mages could not penetrate the rock layer inside the mountain, there was still Achi, a magic shooter, whose super magic, spiral ultra-high pressure water drill could even crush metal, let alone a mere mountain. So it was. After finding the first natural node, List's heart was on fire. Together with the invisible dragon bard, they continued to escape outside the material world to find new natural nodes. At this time, the powerful search ability of the spiral positioning was fully demonstrated. Soon, he found the second natural node. After opening the node, there was turbulent seawater outside, crashing violently on the material boundary, but unable to enter outside the material world. Unfortunately, the node is in the sea, and it seems to be in the deep sea. This node probably can't be developed. He did not even dare to go out. Bard could not swim, and it would be a big joke if he drowned in the sea. So he left the natural node and continued to fly in the world outside the material world, searching for natural node. The material world was very big, but the world outside the material world did not have the concept of big, as if everything was squeezed together. To use a very vivid metaphor, the material world was a huge white paper. Each point on the white paper could only move on the white paper. The world outside of matter was the void outside the white paper. Under normal latitude, the distance between each point on the white paper would naturally be the shortest if one walked in a straight line on the white paper. However, the world beyond the material world was like crumpling a piece of white paper into a ball. If one continued to walk on the surface of the white paper, the distance would not change. However, if one walked on the outside of the white paper, it would be very easy to connect two originally unreachable points together. The natural node was to find such a point that could go outside the white paper. There were no boundaries, no distance, and even the concept of time was a blur. The world outside of the physical world was an inconceivable place for normal creatures. Only the invisible dragon could travel freely here. Another natural node found. Let's go, List urged, and one man and one dragon flew to the third natural node. A moment later, the natural node was opened. It was a forest outside. When List flew out of the natural node, he suddenly discovered an interesting problem. He had actually arrived near the Flaming Mountain, which was a branch of the Flaming Mountain range. The emerald dragon, Ethan, was placed in the mountain. As if sensing something, Ethan flapped his wide wings and flew over from the mountain valley. Roar! The dragon's roar greeted List. Ethan, the environment of the Flaming Mountain is not bad, right? List revealed himself and looked at the emerald dragon flying closer and closer. He used the dragon heart code to communicate. Roar! When Ethan flew halfway up the mountain, he did not go any closer. He did not like the invisible dragon, so he naturally stopped. However, the location of the mountain he chose was not good. The rocks on the hillside could not withstand his weight of over 100 tons, and it directly caused a landslide. Fortunately, Ethan's reaction was not slow, and he flew again. However, List noticed that the hillside that Ethan stepped on revealed a milky white mountain. At this time, he and Bard still had their crystal vision activated. In the crystal vision, the milky white mountain flickered with a faint chaotic light, which was the light of mana retroaction. With a thought, one man and one dragon flew over. List directly jumped down from the dragon's back and climbed to the location of the landslide. He looked with his eyes and immediately raised his eyebrows. Jade! He immediately understood that this should be the jade vein that was the reward of the smoke mission. He took out a bone hammer and smashed the rocks around the jade. After the rocks shattered, as expected, milky white jade veins were exposed. Bard was not interested in the jade veins, and he closed his eyes and dozed off. Ethan, however, rushed over excitedly. Roar! Seeing the traces of jade exposed in the mountain, the entire dragon immediately became excited. It was as if a chicken nest had become a phoenix's nest. It originally thought that it was randomly placed in the wilderness by List, but it did not expect to find a jade vein. Roar! It stretched out its forelimbs and gently slid its claws towards the jade vein next to List. Suddenly, a jade vein was broken by it. The raw stones, which were half rock and half jade, rolled around, revealing the even denser jade vein in the depths of the mountain. That was just the outer layer of the vein. All right, Ethan, don't waste it. I will send people over to mine the jade vein. When that time comes, you will have a share, eat as much as you want. Roar! I'll give you a mission. Go to the other mountains and dig a few more times. See how big this jade vein is. With the jade as a driving force, Ethan was very easy to talk to and immediately flew up. He flew to the waist of the neighboring mountain and casually swiped with his claws, and a new milky white jade vein was dug out. He drew 10 mountains in a row, and all of them contained jade veins. An entire branch of the mountain range was buried with jade veins. Conservatively speaking, the reserves were more than 100,000 tons. Jade was bought and sold by the weight in the market. Suddenly obtaining a 100,000-ton jade vein undoubtedly made List feel like he had been hit by a huge gold ingot. If I excavate all of this jade vein, it will probably be enough for me to use for 100 years. Roar! Ethan roared to express his thoughts. He wanted List to immediately help him build a dragon nest here, and from now on, he would settle down in this jade mountain. As an adult dragon, he was smart enough to express that as long as there was a sufficient supply of jade, producing light emeralds would not be a problem. All right, you can build your dragon nest here. I will send people over immediately, but it will have to wait until after the new year. The road between Mount Maelstrom and Flaming Mountain is not open yet. Ethan nodded to show that he understood. Chapter 858. The Volcanic Crater Natural Node, the Sea Natural Node, and the Jade Mountain Natural Node. On the way back, List found 3 natural nodes. Among them, the Volcanic Crater and the Jade Mountain Natural Nodes were natural nodes that could be developed. When the invisible dragon saw the Maelstrom magic array, it directly opened a passage to return to the entrance of the Maelstrom cave, and then returned to Fire City. He told Achi about the discovery of the 3 natural node. However, Achi was still summarizing the information of the magic gate for the time being and had not yet formulated a plan to develop the magic gate. She also needed time to practice space elemental embodiment. Once she mastered the space elemental embodiment perfectly, it would be of great benefit to the development of the magic gate, because she could travel through space with List and the invisible dragon. At that time, it would be much easier for Achi to arrange the magic gate herself. Brother, the more natural nodes you master, the better. Only in this way can you choose the most suitable natural node to open the magic gate and complete the magic transmission array. Understood, leave this matter to me. Just as List was gearing up to explore the world beyond the material world, the smoke mission brought good news. Mission completed, reward. Cement. Obviously, the volcanic ash idea provided by List helped the craftsmen of the Fire Dragon Brick Factory to successfully develop cement. With the success of cement development, the booming development of the construction industry was just around the corner. Most importantly, Flame Island had endless volcanoes, where volcanic ash could be said to be inexhaustible. There was almost no shortage of cement for the construction of the future island. Congratulations, but cement should not be needed on Black Horse Island. I no longer intend to continue to develop in the Flame territory. I will maintain the current industrial pattern and fully focus on the development of Flame Island. List's thinking was very clear, and he planned to use the magic platform to give instructions. He told the Fire Dragon Brick Factory to prepare for relocation. When he returned to Black Horse Island next time, he would move all the craftsmen of the Fire Dragon Brick Factory to Flame Island. At the same time, he also planned to move the Guild of Magic as a whole, and then let the mages settle in the Fire Dragon Brick Factory and continue to develop new types of cement with the craftsmen. Volcanic ash could be used as a cement material, and other ash may not necessarily not be used as a cement material. However, when he saw the new smoke mission, he suddenly felt that his idea was a bit superfluous. Mission: the traffic between Black Horse Island and Flame Island is the biggest obstacle to the development of the Flame Island. However, the preparation of the Magic Gate gives you another option outside of the Great Voyage. Why not find the natural nodes around Black Horse Island and wait for the Magic Gate to be established? Reward: middle-level dragon beast herd. This was the rhythm of building a magic gate between Black Horse Island and Flame Island. Once the magic gate was established, Flame Island and Black Horse Island would be connected. If I really build a magic gate, with Black Horse Island as a foothold, I can absorb the Sapphire family as my followers and make the Grand Duchy of Sapphire a vassal of the Fire Kingdom. He rubbed his chin. He suppressed this thought for the time being and looked at the reward. I can't believe the reward is a group of middle-level dragons. Not just one, but a group. I'm going to be rich. So far, he had encountered quite a few dragon-type creatures. Dragon-type wild beasts included the blue blood horse, the black blood horse, the Banpo cow, and the estuary pig. Among the low-level dragons, there were Lolth the rainbow whale and Loki the chocobo. Loki had evolved into a middle-level dragon thanks to the bloodline fruit. Of course, he had never seen a middle-level dragon. He had never seen a high-level dragon, but he heard that the Pegasus in the Pegasus Forest of the Steel and Iron Ridge Kingdom were high-level dragons, and there was even a super dragon, a unicorn. List had always wanted to find a unicorn and see this legendary magical creature that only pure virgins could see. Among the super dragons, there were the flame dragon bird and the thunder dragon turtle. I don't know what kind of dragon this time will be. I hope it is a breed that can be ridden in combat. Let me take advantage of the opportunity to establish the Dragon Orders of Chivalry and contribute to the Burning Orders of Chivalry. List spent several days looking for new natural nodes, and the results were really remarkable. He found 3 new natural nodes. However, 2 of them were in the sea, and he did not dare to go out for fear of drowning. The other one was above the sea. He used the sextant to locate it and found that this node was actually between the Flame Islands and the Whirlpool Islands, surrounded by the vast sea, and the development value was very low. If the natural node was near the sea, with a Chi's powerful ability to control water, he might be able to build another big whirlpool. However, it was too dangerous in the vast sea. Time went by slowly. List did not find any new natural nodes, and the New Year's Day was approaching. After another day of fruitless search, he found the big whirlpool magic teleportation array. Riding the invisible dragon bard, he passed through the channel and returned to Fire City. Another piece of good news was received. A small team of knights found a broken statue of a moon killer man in a tribe of pioneers. Because this tribe had more than 30,000 people, the knight team chose to corrupt the ancient sorcerer to recruit the moon killer men to work in the forest. Not in a hurry, the statue was left in this big tribe named Dusk. Where is the Dusk tribe? List asked. Here. The captain of the night team pointed to a certain location on the map of Blazing Island. It was the basin of the Whirlpool River, but it was the basin of another tributary. The location on the map was very clear. This was the credit of Orders of Chivalry and the Sorcerer. Not only were they responsible for pioneering, but every time they reached a place, a sorcerer would follow them to measure the location and record the terrain. So far, on the new map of Blazing Island, the terrain of the Whirlpool River Basin had basically been explored. For the next step of pioneering, Orders of Chivalry was ready to advance to the Guangbao Forest south of the Whirlpool Mountains. You lead the way, and choose a sorcerer who has learned moon language to follow me. Let's go to the Dusk Tribe. List ordered straightforwardly. The news of the invisible dragon had basically been exposed, so when the knight and the sorcerer sat in the prepared wicker basket, List directly rode Bard, grabbed the basket, and flew to the Dusk Tribe. He and the invisible dragon were hidden in the material boundary, and only the wicker basket was exposed. It looked like the wicker basket was automatically flying in the air, and the scene was very strange. However, the Earth Knight Dennis and the Sorcerer Harold sitting in the wicker basket didn't have the slightest shame or indignation, only uncontrollable excitement. It's a dragon. An invisible dragon. Even His Highness can't see it. This is inconceivable. Dennis thought to himself. His Highness really has a second dragon. What kind of great dragon knight am I following? When the country is established, I will definitely become a noble aristocrat. Harold looked forward to it. His Highness the formidable dragon knight, and His Excellency the great magic shooter. I wonder if I can become a member of the court sorcerer in the future? Not all sorcerers were indifferent to fame and fortune, and their hearts were devoted to the truth. Most sorcerers were also keen on worldly power. Therefore, many sorcerers would become consecrated by great aristocrats, and even enter the palace to serve the aristocratic class. All of a sudden. Chapter 859. This chapter celebrates another Guild Master war song. Boom! The invisible dragon's firebird spread out, and all the Moonkillers of the Cloud Tribe trembled under the firebird. Dennis and Harold couldn't help but feel nervous. But soon the firebird disappeared, and the invisible dragon's transparent crystal-like figure appeared above the valley. The ancient sorcerers of the Moonkillers trembled and looked up at the invisible dragon flying above their heads. They didn't know what to do and couldn't even think of resisting. "Listener, come out and speak," Sorcerer Harold shouted in the language of the moon. "I'm the listener of the Cloud Tribe. Who are you?" An ancient sorcerer in a black sackcloth cloak, holding a wooden staff decorated with a skull at the top, carefully walked forward. "Ta, don't you recognize me?" Dennis, who had been to the Cloud Tribe before, lifted the mask on his helmet. The listener was called Tanasto, and the Moonkillers of the Cloud Tribe called him Ta. Ta looked at Dennis with eyes that might have gone through puberty. His wrinkled face was expressionless. "It's you, Foreign Flame Man, Knight, a knight of business." When the night team attacked the Moonkillers, they all claimed to be businessmen and Knight of the Flame Kingdom. An ancient sorcerer walked to Ta and shouted, "Flame Man, why are you still here? We, the Cloud Tribe, have refused. Without food, we won't send men and women to work for you. You can refuse me." Dennis raised his head and said in high spirits, "But you can't refuse my lord." He suddenly pointed to the sky and pointed to the invisible dragon hovering in the air. Biglised. Then he pointed to List on the back of the invisible dragon and shouted, "Seiki?" Biglised was a dragon, and Seiki was a saint. The ancient sorcerers suddenly exclaimed. They looked at the sky in fear and shouted, "Biglised! Seiki! That's Biglised and Seiki!" The Moonkillers' ancient sorcerers had never seen a dragon, but they grew up listening to the legends of dragons. Saint was what they called their ancestors. Seeing Dennis shouting, they were stunned. They seemed to be playing along with the show. List unleashed his dragon's might once again, blasting the ancient magicians to the ground. After a few rounds of torment, coupled with Dennis and Harold's swindling, The ancient magicians of the Cloud tribe dizzily shouted that List was Seki and that the invisible dragon was Big Lizard, and then chose to surrender. Acting as a guide, he led List and the others to the statue in the valley. The statue was placed in a cave. There was a platform in front of the cave. It was probably a place where people usually sang and danced before the bonfire. The listening pagoda pointed at the grotto and chattered. Harold translated for List. He is saying that this is a statue of an ancestor, a saint like you, your highness. They are all descendants of the saint and they worship the saint. Tell him to move. Harold immediately translated it into moon language. Tower and the ancient sorcerers did not dare to resist. They stood aside and watched as List walked into the cave step by step. There was a statue in the cave. It was badly damaged, and some parts were even supported by wood. It seemed to be stronger than the protection of the Holy Tribe and the Horn Tribe. Of course, the strength was limited. List really didn't know what was in the minds of these moon-killing people. It was clearly a relic of their ancestors, and they were so respectful, but they didn't take good care of it. Instead, they let these statues be exposed to the wind and sun until they almost turned into sand and stone. He didn't care whether the statue was broken or not. Seeing that the statue's hands were still there, and that it was holding a book, he was relieved. The moon-killing people had 6 statues on the holy mountain. He had already obtained the ancient artifact sealed in the hands of 2 statues, the Scepter of Time and the 8 Dragons' Sword. Now he was about to get the 3rd ancient artifact. It looks like a magic book? He didn't think much about it. He directly jumped to the statue's hand, took out a bone hammer, and began to slowly hit the stone magic book. This action immediately caused a commotion among the moon-killing people. The listening pagoda shouted, "That is a relic of our ancestors, stop." Harold and Dennis glared and said, "Shut up, the great Seki wants to do something, you can only watch quietly." However, the two's act was not enough to scare off the moon-killing people. Under the lead of Ta, the ancient magicians shouted one after another, trying to stop List's action. However, List didn't stop at all. The invisible dragon directly activated Dragon's might and gave these ancient magicians a heavy blow for the 3rd time. The ancient magicians of the Red Cloud tribe didn't have as much backbone as the ancient magicians of the Holy Tribe. Under the pressure of the invisible dragon's might, they unwillingly shut up. Bang! List quickly broke the stone magic book. Sure enough, there was also a sealed artifact inside. It was in the shape of an open magic book, but the strange thing was that it wasn't a real magic book. It was in the shape of a book carved from a special wood. It remained open and couldn't be closed. There were no words on the open page, which looked very strange. He didn't look at it carefully and directly put it into the space ring. He found that it was easily stored. Probably not related to the Holy Dragon, this magic book seemed to be made of some kind of wood. It had neither the power of time nor the power of an elemental dragon. He jumped down from the statue. List let Dennis and Harold act as translators. He gave the Red Cloud tribe a good beating, forcing the Red Cloud tribe to open up native recruitment and allow orders of chivalry to enter and leave the Red Cloud tribe at will. However, he didn't take Dennis and Harold with him. Instead, he let them stay in the Red Cloud tribe. Anyway, they would be his serfs sooner or later, so the earlier he conquered them, the earlier he could contribute. On the way back, he took out the special magic book again and slowly fumbled with it. However, he didn't see any reaction from the magic book. I don't know what the Scepter of Time does, but I also don't know how to use this magic book. This was a bit embarrassing. Since conventional methods didn't work, he planned to try using unconventional method. He let Bard land by a river and sprinkle some water on the book to see if there was any reaction. Naturally, there was no reaction. This wooden magic book did not have any words written on it, and it did not have words that would appear when touched by water. Then, is it because the paste is too thick? He thought of another strange idea, so he pulled out the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword. The 8 Dragons' Divine Sword was a support-type weapon, not suitable for carrying around and fighting at all times. He scratched the magic book with the blade. He wanted to test the hardness of the magic book. However, a strange scene happened. When the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword touched the magic book suddenly released a ray of light. Then, on the originally wordless page, glowing moon language words condensed one after another. This is... He took the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword away. The words were still there, but they were slowly dimming. He put the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword back on the page, and the words lit up again. Amazing! He took out the moon language notebook and compared it with the word. He quickly found the general meaning of the moon language: elven blood, ice dragon bone, ice elemental transformation. This directly deciphered the attributes of the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword. List expressed his shock. The material of the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword was indeed the dragon bone of an ice dragon, and it had been soaked in the blood of a great elf. Could indeed transform any kind of chi into ice elemental chi. However, the magic book lacked one function. Could also seal chi domains in ice. Presumably, during the era of the Moon Empire, the knight probably hadn't developed chi domains yet. Chapter 860. To verify if the ancient book of knowledge was really so magical, List then tried to take out various artifacts and touch the magic book. The spatial ring touched it. Light flashed, and a simple moon language appeared: invisible dragon gem, independent space. The 8 Dragons' Sword touched it. Light flashed, and a simple moon language appeared: elemental dragon strength, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, ice, darkness, amplification. The mystical dragon soul fruit touched it. Light flashed, and a simple moon language appeared: emerald fruit, emerald dragon strength, mystical dragon soul. List nodded slightly. So the mystical dragon soul fruit was called emerald fruit in the Moon Empire era. The dragon hind leg I found was indeed an emerald dragon's hind leg. The sapphire pendant touched it. Light flashed, and another simple moon language appeared: sapphire, amplification. Then, he touched a golden pearl that had yet to be polished to it. Light flashed, and an even simpler moon language appeared: water element material. It's just a water element material. There's no more introduction? List was a little dissatisfied with the identification of the golden pearl. He also knew that the golden pearl was a water element material. Any magician or knight could figure that out. The key was what the golden pearl was used for. Putting away the golden pearl, he took out a phoenix feather. Light flashed, and a simple moon language appeared: phoenix feather, amplification of fire element. This introduction is clear, especially the moon language name, Phoenix. It seems that in the Moon Empire era, the flame dragon bird was already called Phoenix. Perhaps the legend of the Phoenix was inherited from the Moon Empire. He then took out a bloodthirsty bat fong. This was an artifact taken from a Black Knight family vampire. It was a powerful piece of equipment to help vampires train. He had originally planned to give it to Mary Dawn as a reward after she made a contribution. After touching the magic book, light flashed, and a new moon language appeared: mutated blood element material. This introduction is a little interesting. Mutated blood element. It seems that the Moon Empire era had already studied blood magic, but there's no introduction to the bloodthirsty bat fong. For the next part of the journey, List kept taking out all kinds of artifacts to test, including the telescope, the one-handed sword, and other items that did not have magic power. The ancient book of knowledge could not be identified, and there was no reaction. As for common magical equipment and magical materials, it only gave a simple introduction of XX attribute materials. However, when it came to the Super Dragon materials and the equipment made from Dragon-type materials, it could clearly identify the raw materials and provide a brief introduction of the functions. How should I put it? Liszt evaluated the ancient book of knowledge. In terms of identifying materials, it does have a very powerful function, and its value is immeasurable. However, it's only limited to high-end materials. There's not much meaning in identifying low-end materials. It's far from being an encyclopedia. Of course, one could not expect a special magic book to contain all the knowledge in the world. As long as a high-end material could be appraised, it was already extremely valuable. It was no less valuable than a divine weapon like the 8 Dragons' divine sword. When I get back, I can take the scepter of time from a chi and have it appraised. I wonder what kind of appraisal results the ancient book of knowledge will give. Not long after, they arrived at Fireforge City. He gestured to the invisible dragon bard to rest first, and went straight to the wizard tower to find a chi, who was busy. A chi, I found something good. What is it? Give me the scepter of time first. Taking the scepter of time from a chi, Liszt directly touched the scepter of time to the ancient book of knowledge. In the next moment, light bloomed. A paragraph of the language of the moon appeared: twilight dragon gem, golden apple wood, reflecting time. A chi was already familiar with the language of the moon, and directly translated the meaning of the language of the moon. Brother, are these words an introduction to the scepter of time? The diamond of time is the gem of the twilight dragon, and the scepter itself is made from the wood of the golden apple tree. The golden apple is a legendary treasure. Does it really exist? Since the ancient book of knowledge clearly gave an appraisal result, it means that the golden apple really exists. Liszt now basically adopted an attitude of belief towards the legends of this world. The difference was whether the legend was exaggerated or not, and not whether the legendary item existed. Ancient book of knowledge? It is this magic book. This is a divine weapon I found at the hand of the third statue. It can appraise high-end dragon-type equipment materials and give a rough introduction. Liszt pointed to the language of the moon on the book. The scepter of time is made from the twilight dragon gem and the golden apple wood, and its attribute is time reflection. What does time reflection mean, brother? I don't know. In fact, it seems impossible to activate it with magic power, which is why I gave it to you to study. A chi has no time to study it for the time being. Let's talk about it when you have time. In any case, the scepter of time is not going anywhere. At this time, a chi suddenly thought of something. Right, brother, can the ancient book of knowledge appraise sprites? Appraise sprites? Liszt stared blankly. In fact, there was no need to appraise sprites. After spitting out the worm stalk, he could tell what kind of sprite it was. However, he had yet to appraise a living creature. His own hand did not count, and there was no reaction when he placed it on the book. Therefore, he took out a sprite worm and placed it on the ancient book of knowledge. Then, the magic book glowed, but only one language of the moon word appeared: sprite. Oh, do you think I'm blind? Do I need you to remind me that this isn't sprite? Liszt chuckled at the ability of the ancient book of knowledge. Well, it's useless for me to keep this ancient book of knowledge. I'll give it to you, Achi. It just so happens that you often need to identify magic materials. Achi did not refuse. Okay. After obtaining the ancient book of knowledge, Liszt's heart began to burn with passion for the artifacts sealed in the other 3 statues. He did not know what kind of special artifacts were sealed in them. However, he was not in a hurry. When all the Moon Killer tribes were conquered, these artifacts would fall into his hands sooner or later. So, he continued to look for Natural Node. Not only to complete the smoke mission, but he also really wanted to open up the passage between Black Horse Island and Flame Island. So as the days passed, he continued to search. Soon, the year 154 of the Sapphire calendar came to an end, and the new year 155 slowly arrived. The Thorn Castle did not have the joy and laughter of last year. The servants, under the leadership of Butler Carter, had a simple New Year's Day. The newly built castle in Firewood City was bustling with activity. Liszt and his followers were celebrating the first New Year's Day on Firewood Island in the castle named Firewood Castle. Your Highness, I propose that this year be the first year of the Flame calendar. Today is the first New Year's Day of the Flame calendar. Duarte Red Apricot raised his glass and said, Chapter 861. There were no unknown reward quests for the new year this year, which was a pity for Liszt, but it was a bit difficult to find the natural node of Black Horse Island. It was very difficult for the invisible dragon to set off from the Whirlpool Islands and cross more than 3,500 kilometers of sea, unless a Chi checked the invisible dragon to Black Horse Island. However, although the invisible dragon had a mild temperament, he was unwilling to go into the water and didn't cooperate with Liszt's arrangement at all. Therefore, he could only enter the world outside the material world from the Flame Island, then find a natural node close to Black Horse Island, and then cross over to Black Horse Island and begin to search that area carefully. I hope to find a suitable natural node as soon as possible. At present, 8 new natural nodes and 3 old natural nodes have been discovered, but they are basically all within the range of Flame Island. I still have to go to Black Horse Island to find the natural nodes around Black Horse Island. Liszt thought. The 3 old natural nodes were the entrance to the Great Whirlpool, the entrance to the Whirlpool Cave, and the entrance to the Hourglass Valley. 8 new natural nodes. The volcanic crater, the Jade Mountain, 4 natural nodes in the sea, and 1 natural node on the sea far away from the island. The last natural node, which was also discovered near the end of the new year, was located in a lake in the southeast corner of the fiery island. There were many reeds on the shores of the lake, so it was named Reed Marshes. In other words, 6 of the 11 natural nodes could be used, especially the volcanic crater, the Jade Mountain, the Reed Marsh, and the entrance to the relic. If he could open the magic gate, he would be able to pass through the northwest, central, and southeast regions of the blazing island. Achi was still diligently practicing her space elemental incarnation. The preparations for the magic gate had already been completed. As long as she could perfectly master the elemental incarnation, she could open the magic gate at any time. Liszt and the invisible dragon bard spent a lot of time in the world outside the material world almost every day. The helix positioning had been improved several times, and it could detect any subtle fluctuations in the natural node. Don't worry, Bard. The natural node is just there, waiting for us to discover it. Liszt was half consoling the invisible dragon and half consoling himself. It didn't snow on Inferno Island last December, and the temperature didn't drop below 0. But the weather was dry and cold, and it was even worse than a snowy day. The crops in the fields had stopped growing, and the elves had already gone into hibernation. There was no longer enough food in the forest. The animals that should be hiding and hibernating had long disappeared. It was January now. The dry and cold temperature was getting worse, allowing Liszt to see the not-so-mild side of Blazing Island. It was a little hard, Your Highness. The potato harvest was not as plentiful as I had imagined. Taking in the Moon Killer tribe natives as serfs would consume a lot of food, and it would be hard to maintain the stability of Infernal City. Estuary City in the south has also sent us news of a food emergency. Should we postpone the incorporation of serfs? Durut Red Apricot had gained Liszt's trust and was in charge of the development of Fiery Island. There's no need to postpone it. It's more difficult for us to kill the Moon People. At this time, it's very easy to use food as bait to tame the Moon People. I will personally transport food from Black Horse Island to support the use of the pioneering team. List relied on the fact that he and Achi could continuously transport food and did not agree to Duterte's request. However, he felt very regretful. The potato sprite, Kutcher, was very useful, but the planting time was too short. Many of the potatoes hadn't matured yet, and it was already winter. Under the influence of the dry and cold climate, even the great elves could no longer promote the growth of the potatoes. Otherwise, this wave of potato harvest could still support the consumption for half a month. Now, food could only be transported from Black Horse Island. I hope to find a natural node to Black Horse Island as soon as possible. As if his wishes had come true, just as he was worrying about food, the invisible dragon bard suddenly sensed abnormal feedback from a natural node. Let's go. Flying over and tearing the material boundary of the node, a set of skilled operations were completed, and the dragon and man had already seen the world outside the natural node. Well, this turns out to be the Heart Island. List flew out of the natural node and found himself on the Heart Island that had been dug out. The island, which used to be buried with the emerald dragon's hind legs, had been cut by half with the excavation of the light emerald mine. A large amount of soil and rocks had been dug out. A large number of stones were pushed down the cliff and piled up around the island, expanding the Heart Island to twice its original size. Very good. The location of this natural node is very good. It's only 600 kilometers away from Black Horse Island. List was overjoyed and finally found a natural node located in the Sapphire Archipelago. Although it was not around Black Horse Island, it could still be used as an alternative to communicate with the Sapphire Archipelago and the Flame Archipelago. He immediately rode the invisible dragon and flew high into the material boundary and flew in the direction of Black Horse Island. At the same time, he was also thinking about the location of this natural node. Why is it on the Heart Island? The previous natural nodes at sea and in the sea could not be discussed for the time being, but the natural nodes on land were very interesting. The crater used to be a large volcano, the Jade Mountain was full of jade, and it was not clear what resources there were in the reed marshes. The natural resources of the Heart Island were obviously the hind legs of the emerald dragon at the beginning. Is the formation of these natural nodes related to the real material world? Is there a strong magic that interferes with the material boundary to form natural nodes? He thought of the triangular theory of matter-spirit magic, where magic and matter were constantly changing to a certain extent. It is very likely that a place is full of magic, or there has been a magic outburst event, which led to the formation of natural nodes. Of course, the study of natural nodes was not deep enough, and the essential reason was not yet clear. List no longer worried about it, flew all the way at top speed, and finally arrived at Black Horse Island when it was dark. Back on the island, the invisible dragon flew directly to the smoke grass plantation to rest, while List lived in Thorn Castle, enjoying the comfortable environment of the castle. The next day, after dealing with the official business that had accumulated over a period of time, without stopping, he rode Bard to look for natural nodes around Black Horse Island. Almost as soon as he entered the world outside the material world, he found a natural node. He skillfully opened the node, and the hole appeared in a closed lake. At the bottom of the lake was a magma channel that had already solidified. The invisible dragon did not want to go into the water, but it could not resist List's guidance, and the lake looked very shallow, so it barely flew out of the natural node. Then it quickly rushed out of the shallow lake. Outside it was a field of harvested crops covered with a layer of snow. Several serfs dressed in hemp clothes were placing bird cages in the snow. This scene was all too familiar. Black Horse Island. This is the Lake of Bones in Red River Town, the place where the body of the previous fire dragon was originally buried. Such a discovery made List feel extremely surprised. What natural node could be more wonderful than here? Sure enough, The place with the most conflicting magic on Black Horse Island is the Fire Dragon Burial Ground. And the burial ground also happened to form a natural node. Boom! Bard landed on the ground. List walked to the lake and looked at the small lake, feeling relaxed and happy. A cloud of smoke appeared in front of him, forming a serpentine text. Chapter 862. The Lake of Bones was filled with lake water. If he wanted to build the magic gate, the lake water needed to be emptied. It was easy to empty the Lake of Bones. He just needed to dig an opening and connect it to the Red River, not far away. The terrain of the Lake of Bones was higher than the Red River, so the lake water could not be stored. Then, he needed to dig a little, dig the Lake of Bones into a square, and open the magic gate on the square. I don't know if the magic gate he set up will have too much turbulence and repulsive force. If it is like the entrance of the Whirlpool Cave, flying out every time, it will still be a big problem to pass through. I hope the repulsive force can be reduced, and I can enter and exit at normal speed. Although this was what he was thinking, he did not do anything immediately. He still had to wait for a Chi to inspect it personally before making a decision. There were specializations in every field. Coordinating the overall situation and fighting against the heroes were his forte, and the magic profession was a Chi's forte. He looked at the new smoke mission, and after seeing the content, he vaguely had the illusion of a pain in the ass. Mission: build roads if you want to be rich. The development of Flame Island will face many problems, and the lack of smooth roads is one of the main constraints, especially for a knight. Without sufficient open space to charge, it will be difficult to unleash their combat power. Please build 500 kilometers of roads on Flame Island. Reward: Emily's new life of Chi. The mission reward was very good. The new life of Chi referred to the promotion of mid-level Chi to high-level Chi. Emily was about to become a Sky Knight, which was worth celebrating. As the only genius in the territory who matched the status of a Dragon Knight candidate, List had high hopes for this 14-year-old girl. He had been training her as a light green Dragon Knight. But Emily, who did not have a cheat, was still not as strong as List, who advanced from Earth Knight to Sky Knight in half a year, and then became a Dragon Knight in a few months. She trained as an Earth Knight for a full year, and from Sky Knight to Dragon Knight, it would probably take longer. She probably could not become a fighting force in a short time, unless the light green gem dragon recognized her, and was willing to help her start training Dragon Chi in advance. If that was the case, then reaching the peak of advanced Do Chi was just around the corner. Emily is 14 this year, 15 next year, and 16 the year after that. If she's given a few more years, there's a chance that she'll be able to ride a dragon before she's 20. This kind of talent is really frightening. The only thing I have to worry about is that once her body develops, she'll probably be restricted as a female. There had been female Sky Knights since ancient times, but there had never been a female Dragon Knight. Female powerhouses were mostly concentrated in the field of mages. Although the 6 statues of the Moon Killer's ancestors had long been destroyed beyond recognition, one of them, which was the one holding the ancient Book of Knowledge, was a female statue. I hope Emily can break this rule and become the first female Dragon Knight. No matter what, List would do his best to nurture Emily. Even if she couldn't become a Dragon Knight in the future, she could still learn the Do Chi Domain Scroll and become a Domain Knight. The talent she had displayed was worth nurturing. Moreover, List could not tell if he had some unspeakable thoughts in his heart. Nurturing a Lolita. This smoke mission has to be completed as soon as possible to help Emily regenerate her Do Chi. However, the mission is too difficult. I have to build a 500-kilometer road on Flame Island. The road was not an ordinary path, but a road that could be used by a knight to charge. It was not limited to a stone road, even a dirt road could be used. However, the standard requirement for a road was that the road was very wide, very flat, and could not have too many curves. Generally, roads were built around big cities. There was a road around Iron Hoof City that led to Bull Castle, which was 30 kilometers long. Now, to build a 500-kilometer road was a huge project. With the current strength of Infernal City, it would probably take more than half a year. When encountering a river, he had to build a bridge. When encountering a mountain, he had to dig a tunnel. If the terrain was too complicated, it might not be completed in more than half a year. I'll take it one step at a time. The discovery of the natural node on Black Horse Island allowed List to travel between Black Horse Island and Flame Island at will. After flying for half an hour in the world outside the material world, he successfully found the wormhole space fluctuation of the Great Maelstrom Magic Transmission Array. Then he rode the invisible dragon Bard directly across the wormhole space and flew out of the vortex hole. Looking at the flowing waterfall behind him, List suddenly thought of something. I have 4 spatial rings, and a chi has 2 spatial rings. If we add them together, we have about 400 cubic meters of space, which is equivalent to a large warehouse. Before the magic gate is established, I can act as a porter and use the space ring to transport supplies. Large items could not be transported, but valuables could be transported by him personally. He did not see a chi in the Mage Tower laboratory. After asking Lucy and the twins, he learned that a chi had gone out and would return in the evening. List was thinking about whether to take advantage of this time to go back to Black Horse Island and deliver a batch of rubber water. Suddenly, he received a report that the knight who went to the Red Cloud tribe encountered a large invasion of giant elephants. The Red Cloud tribe was unable to resist and had all moved into the sphere of influence of Infernal City. Giant elephants? List asked carefully and learned that it was a very powerful Earth attribute World of Warcraft that moved in group. They did not hurt people, but they directly took away the warehouse where the Red Cloud tribe stored food, then wantonly destroyed buildings and plundered food. Everywhere they passed, the ground was trampled flat. Even the ground was trampled flat? Yes, Your Highness. The group of giant elephants is too strong. It is difficult for us knight to launch a charge. They stamp their feet, the ground shakes, and then our mounts will be unstable. Magicians' magic can't hurt them. They all know magic, rock armor. Rock armor was an advanced earth magic. Dosen knew this trick. It formed a solid rock on the body, and its defense was no worse than mithril armor. List's heart moved. List rode the invisible dragon Bard directly and flew to the Red Cloud tribe. After a few flashes, he had arrived at the valley where the Red Cloud tribe was located. After a little search, he saw the group of giant elephants that the knight had mentioned. There were about 100 of them, including elephants and small elephants. It was a large family group. The giant elephants looked very strange, very different from the common elephants. The most special thing was the huge jaws under their noses, which seemed to be infinitely elongated, long and wide, with a pair of big teeth in front of them. It was like a big shovel on the chin. And its tusks, which should have been long, were not protruding, only about 1 meter. Compared to a height of at least 6 meters and a body of more than 20 tons, the tusks were very short, and the nose was not long enough. Its limbs were short and stout, and its overall body looked bloated than the average elephant, and its head was not big enough. Chapter 863. With their huge bodies and exaggerated jaws, List had already given this group of giant elephants a name in his heart: shovel-toothed giant elephants. Seeing their rich earth attribute magic and their powerful ability to easily trample the ground, he had an incomparable desire to tame this group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, then use it to build roads. With this group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, the construction of the 500-kilometer gallop shouldn't be a problem. I knew that smoke missions wouldn't give unsolvable difficult missions. It turns out that everything is arranged by the power of fate. Without this group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, there would be number 500-kilometer Gallat mission. His mind was suddenly enlightened. The invisible dragon sensed his thoughts and let out a sharp whine, flying out of the material boundary, revealing a crystal-clear body like flowing water. The wild firebird poured out like a waterfall, impacting the shovel-toothed giant elephants on the ground. Ong! 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 The shovel-toothed giant elephants, who were searching for food, were attacked by such a fierce firebird and immediately screamed again and again, then crawled on the ground one after another, not daring to move. In World of Warcraft, there was a clear superior and subordinate pressure in front of the dragon. Bard, continue to suppress the shovel-toothed giant elephants. I want to tame them myself. After communicating, List jumped directly off the dragon's back and landed in the middle of the group of shovel-toothed giant elephants. Elephant herds usually had a leader. List noticed that one of the shovel-toothed giant elephants was exceptionally large, and many giant elephants followed behind it, so he understood that this was the leader of the herd. Seeing List walk over step by step, the leader of the herd, oppressed by the firebird, wanted to move its body, but did not succeed. There was no other reason. List would also release the firebird, causing great pressure on the leader of the herd. It could only let out a frightened wail. But soon the leader of the herd was confused. List dispersed the firebird, and instead took out a large portion of fruit from the gem space. This was the food he had prepared before leaving. As early as when he got the news about the elephant herd, he had expected it, so he prepared to tame them in advance. Carrot and stick food was the carrot and the stick was strength. This was a very skilled skill for List. Back when he tamed Dosen, he had summed up a set of methods to deal with wild beasts. After a few twists and turns, the elephant leader was enveloped by List's intermittent dragon might and attracted by the tempting fragrance of the fruit. It completely understood its fate, to submit to the human in front of it. If it submitted to him, it would have food. If it did not submit, it would be beaten. The logic was clear. The invisible dragon circled around the elephant herd and faithfully carried out the role of a lackey. Compared to the fire dragon Leo, the invisible dragon Bard's spirit and will were easier to get used to, and the day of perfection was just around the corner. According to the order, Ethan the Emerald Dragon was first, Bard second, and Leo last. The fire dragon's evil thoughts would always suppress List's guidance, leading to ups and downs. He mounted the leader of the elephants and sat cross-legged on the back of the elephant. From time to time, he would throw down a portion of fruit. Just like that, he urged the leader of the elephant herd, and the other shovel-toothed giant elephants followed closely behind. The group slowly left the valley of the Xia tribe, heading towards the direction of Infernal Fire City. The sun set and the sun rose. After a day and a night of traveling, they finally crossed the swirling river. They saw the patrolling night squad. The vigilant night squad saw List on the back of the elephant. After a moment of surprise, they hurriedly saluted. "Your Highness!" Asked Duarte and Emily to come here immediately. Also, send a few carts of fruit. It would be best if there are preserved wild bananas in the warehouse, List ordered. Yes, Your Highness. A moment later, Duarte and Emily arrived at the place where the elephants were parked. They brought 6 carts of fruit. Fruits were scarce in this season, so it was good enough to gather 6 carts of fruit. Ong! 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 The elephant herd cried out from time to time, but overall, it was under List's control. Your Highness, what can I do for you? Duarte looked at the elephant herd driven by List. He was not surprised. This incredible dragon Night Lord always had unexpected results. This batch of shovel-toothed giant elephants is a mid-level dragon beast that I have just tamed. I like their magic. If they are used to repair the road, it will definitely be more efficient. List gestured for the night squad to distribute the fruits to the elephant herd. However, I do not have time to tame them. I will leave the specific taming plan to you. Duarte looked troubled. Your Highness, I do not know much about taming animals. Emily replied in a clear voice. Your Highness, please rest assured and leave it to Emily. If that is the case, Duarte, do your best to cooperate with Emily. I will leave the task of taming the shovel-toothed giant elephants to Emily. Liszt was very satisfied with Emily's attitude. A qualified follower should accept the task given by the Lord without hesitation instead of complaining. Duarte also realized that he had said something wrong. He hurriedly corrected himself. Your Highness, please rest assured. I will do my best to cooperate with Emily in taming the elephants. Give me the people and give me the things. The priority is to tame the shovel-toothed giant elephants. Liszt glanced at Duarte. Then he said to Emily, these shovel-toothed giant elephants have a gentle personality and are actually quite easy to tame. However, it will take some training to make them understand how to cooperate with the road construction. You have the experience of taming blizzard beasts, and the blizzard beasts should know how to cooperate with you in taming the shovel-toothed giant elephants. Yes. Then you will follow me for the next 2 days. I will make the leader of the elephant herd listen to your instructions. Without the suppression of Liszt's strength, it would be difficult for the shovel-toothed giant elephants to surrender to an Earth Knight. Emily's face showed a touch of joy when she heard this. Yes, Your Highness. She was very eager to get along with the greatest lord in her mind. In her young girl's heart, Liszt occupied a huge position. It was a kind of worship mixed with many emotions. Of course, she was not a girl who would be overwhelmed by emotions. She had an iron will and a clear brain. Your Highness, if you want to tame the elephant herd, food is the most basic guarantee. The food of the shovel-toothed giant elephants must be amazing. At present, the food reserves in Fire City may not be enough. Leave it to me to arrange. You go and bring the Blizzard Beast team here first. We will gather here in an hour. Liszt turned around and communicated with the invisible dragon Bard using the Dragon Heart Code, asking Bard to maintain the stability of the elephant herd and prevent it from harassing the plantation not far away. He went straight to the Master Tower of Fire City and found Achi, who had returned. Brother Achi, I have found the natural node of Black Horse Island. Now I can travel freely between Black Horse Island and Flame Island. If you don't need your space ring for the time being, leave it to me to transport the materials. If you need any materials, you can directly make a list and I will bring them for you. Yes. Achi carried all the materials in the space ring to the laboratory and handed them back to Liszt. 6 space rings were worn on her hand. Liszt returned to the elephant herd. Emily had already gathered with the Blizzard Beast team near the elephant herd. After seeing Liszt, Dosen and the 8 little ones wagged their tails. They had not forgotten their former master. Woof woof! Woof woof! Dosen, come here! Liszt smiled and waved. Dosen suddenly rushed over and intimately rubbed his head against Liszt's trousers. It was huge, like a small elephant, but at the moment it was as docile as a pug. Chapter 864. The shovel-toothed giant elephants know 3 kinds of magic, all of which are high-level magic, namely hard stone armor, rock cluster, and earth trample. Hard stone armor is covered with a layer of rock. Rock cluster is somewhat similar to rock thorns, but it protrudes as a linear sharp stone wall. Earth trample is an earth attribute magic that has never appeared before. It is triggered by the stamping of the shovel-toothed giant elephants, which can quickly flatten the ground. It was as if a large jack had suddenly slammed into the ground. According to the different strength of each shovel-toothed giant elephant, the area of earth trample is also different. For example, when the leader of the herd activates earth trample, the area reaches a circle with a diameter of 10 meters. Some of the newly grown shovel-toothed giant elephants may only have a diameter of about 5 meters, and the young elephants that have just learned this magic are centered on the stomp, with a diameter of about 1 meter. Hard stone armor and rock cluster are not the focus. The focus of taming is on earth trample. List requires Emily to be proficient in controlling the herd to release earth trample. At the same time, to ensure the discipline of the herd. When the herd has worn off its bestiality, it will begin to introduce the knight to ride. Only when the knight rides and drives can the 121 shovel-toothed giant elephants move in unison. Throughout the second half of January, List assisted Emily in training the shovel-toothed giant elephant herd, while constantly shuttling between Black Horse Island and Flame Island, transporting the necessary materials to maintain the daily operation of the territory. Forward, shovel-toothed giant elephants! Emily rode on the back of the leader of the herd and issued a command. Behind her were more than 100 large and small shovel-toothed giant elephants. On the back of each giant elephant was a knight, led by a young knight. Ong! Ong! The giant elephants raised their trunks from time to time and let out a dull cry. Then they lined up in a disorderly line and set out from the elephant garden along the 40-meter wide road that had been trampled into a hardened block of earth. The speed of their advance was not fast, but the momentum was magnificent, constantly rolling up the dust on the road as if it was smoking. Around the herd, the blizzard beasts, under the leadership of Dosen, constantly circled around the shovel-toothed giant elephants to prevent them from walking around. Under the dual control of the knight and the blizzard beasts, the elephants began to gradually get used to their current way of walking and were no longer free and undisciplined. This is the embryonic form of my mammoth orders of chivalry. In the future, I will continue to expand the population size of the shovel-toothed mammoth, cultivate more earth-attributed Earth Knight, and run in with the shovel-toothed mammoth to carry out construction projects. List rode on the back of the invisible dragon and disappeared into the material boundary. He was in a good mood. He had already decided to rename his direct subordinate orders of chivalry the Burning Legion. The first orders of chivalry in the Burning Legion was the mammoth orders of chivalry in front of them. They weren't focused on fighting, but on construction. Stop! Emily ordered loudly after the elephants arrived at their destination. The giant elephants immediately stopped their somewhat disjointed movements in a disorderly manner. They slowly moved their positions and arranged themselves into a more orderly group. In front of them there used to be a small hill, but now there was only a bare mound of earth. Riding on the leader of the elephants, Emily slowly turned around and gave new instructions to the elephants behind her. First row, step forward. The first row of shovel-toothed mammoths, driven by the knight, stepped forward to the designated position, and then, following Emily's instructions, the knight shouted to their mounts, "Shovel-toothed mammoth, trample the earth! Ong! Ong! Ong!" The shovel-toothed mammoths raised their forelimbs and stomped heavily on the ground. The power of magic bloomed in an instant, and the ground seemed to be smashed by a weight of thousands of pounds. There was an earthquake-like shaking. It could be seen with the naked eye that the ground, which had already been compacted to the point that water droplets could not penetrate, sank another tens of centimeters, and the soil became more solid. If a shovel were to be used to shovel the soil now, it was feared that the shovel would not be able to dig out an inch of soil. The soil was almost as hard as a rock. It was such powerful magic that the original mountain was abruptly flattened. Second row, step forward. Emily gave another order, and the second row of shovel-toothed mammoths, under the knight's control, repeated the previous operation and stomped a few centimeters deeper into the ground. Just like that, row after row of shovel-toothed mammoths repeatedly trampled the ground, back and forth. List was very comfortable watching from the sky. Although the degree of integration is not enough, orders of chivalry can already start building the road. It doesn't need to be 40 meters wide, 20 meters is enough. And the road doesn't need to be so solid, the elephants just need to step back and forth. The most suitable road for a knight's charge was the kind of flat ground with moderate softness and hardness. Real hard roads were really not suitable, as it would hurt the horse's hooves too much. That night, after orders of chivalry returned from their training, Liszt summoned Emily into the castle and informed her about the road building. Duarte, Claus, and the other captains were present at the meeting. "My plan is to build the road from here to here." He gestured with his hand on the map. "Starting from Infernal City and building it in the direction of the Flame Mountain, all the way to the Jade Mountain where the light green gem dragon rested. The straight line distance was about 400 kilometers. However, there was a mountain range in the way, and they needed to make a large detour to avoid the mountain range. It was easy for shovel-toothed mammoths to flatten a small mountain, but it was not possible for them to do so on a large mountain. This distance was just enough for 500 kilometers. Finally, I want to build a new city in this place. I originally planned to build King City here, but I won't consider King City for now. I'll build a Jade City first. The branch of the Flame Mountain Range is called Jade Mountain, and as the name suggests, there is a huge jade mine here." Jade mine. Is it really a jade mine? At first, Duarte and Claus did not understand why Liszt did not build the road to Estuary City first, but instead wanted to build such a road. Now they understood, everything would be worth it if there was a huge jade mine. "I'll give you 2 months. Orders of chivalry will be in charge of building the road. You must ensure their safety along the way and dispatch serfs to transport supplies." The road was named by Liszt as Jade Stone, Fire Avenue. The road construction ceremony was officially launched on February 1st, and the road construction project began. Liszt was still doing logistics, traveling between Black Horse Island and Flame Island, mainly transporting food. Of course, the task of finding natural nodes did not stop, but finding new natural nodes was not something that could be done overnight. He allocated more time to cultivation, often going to Jade Mountain and the light green gem dragon to cultivate, going to Doomsday Volcano and the fire dragon to cultivate. Of course, most of the time, he practiced with the invisible dragon. The Invisible Dragon Knight, Dragon Dochi secret manual was expanding from Ghost Erase, Shadowlift, and Snow Avalanche, creating the 4th move, Sonic Boom Thrust, and the 5th move, Toxic Dragon Drill. The Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon Dochi secret manual also created the 6th move, Magma Point, and the 7th move, Ticeway Cut after Dragon Chop, Burning Sky Sweep, Swallowing Sun Stab, Boiling Sea Twist, and Shaking Earth Hammer. The training with the light green gem dragon was even more rapid, leaving a faint figure of the knight in the mind of the light green gem dragon. The figure of the knight was still very blurry, and its expression could not be seen clearly. There was only an outline, but it was basically the same as Liszt's figure. Riding on the light green gem dragon in the spiritual world, there was a vague 5-meter dragon spear in his hand, and a light gray cloak formed by smoke. Basically, this was the imprint that Liszt left in the heart of the light green gem dragon. Chapter 865. In the mind of the light emerald dragon Ethan, Liszt's faint figure had gradually been imprinted. However, in the mind of the invisible dragon bard, a spiritual imprint had not yet appeared. The fire dragon Leo, who had the longest running in time, also did not have a spiritual imprint. Perhaps it would be the most difficult dragon to have a spiritual imprint. The growth of evil thoughts would always destroy Liszt's influence on it. Basically, every month, Liszt would cut off Leo's mind, filter out the evil thoughts, and leave behind the pure original thoughts. If I want to explore the world, taking Leo with me is the most suitable. He has the most powerful fighting power, but the invisible dragon bard is also very suitable. Sometimes he would struggle with who he should choose as his final mount. Fortunately, there was still a long time to choose. He was now waiting for a chi to practice. The Magic Gate experiment plan was done over and over again, and he could only wait for a chi to perfectly master the spatial elemental incarnation. At present, a chi could transform her whole body into spatial elements, but her mastery of spatial magic was still a little lacking. But soon, with her terrifying talent, perfect mastery was just around the corner. When the magic gate is built, I won't have to work so hard anymore. It's really troublesome to make 3 trips to and from Black Horse Island almost a week to transport supplies. Flame Island was in a dry and cold winter. Everything stopped growing, and there was a serious shortage of food, coupled with the constant absorption of the Moonkiller natives. He also raised a group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, which consumed even more food. The Flame territory had a large trade of sea salt, glass, white paper, and so on. Coupled with perfume, soap, and porcelain that was being explored, it could barely maintain the current supply. Just as he was waiting for the magic gate, another piece of good news was brought back by the knight who attacked the Moonkiller native. Accompanying them was a little girl, no more than 12 or 13 years old. Your Highness, this little girl is called Hippolyta. Her father is Pontlisi, the listener of the small Luo tribe. We found traces of elves in the Luo tribe. Our request for a ransom was rejected, so we arrested all the natives of the Luo tribe. The knight captain reported truthfully. We then found a group of elves hidden in Hippolyta's wooden house, all of whom had contracted with her. We then brought the elves and the worm stalks back. The knight behind the knight captain brought out a large wooden box. After opening it, it was revealed that the box contained tightly bound sprites, 1 greater sprite, 3 lesser sprites, as well as 2 sprite worms. List was pleasantly surprised. He had thought that the sprites mentioned by the night squad were only referring to a few sprite worms. After all, the Luo tribe was just a small tribe with a population of no more than 200 people. Unexpectedly, they actually brought back 1 big and 3 small, as well as 2 sprite worms. The value of this harvest far exceeded that of capturing a large tribe. Good, you've done well. Captain Carl, what's your title? Which lord are you following? List asked. Carl's body trembled when he heard this, and he could not contain his excitement. Your Highness, Carl is a lord knight and I follow you. So you are my direct follower. In that case, from now on, I promote you to Baron. Are there any aristocrats among your squad members? Thank you, Your Highness. No, they are all commoner knight. In that case, everyone will be conferred the title of Lord Knight. Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Your Highness. The knight squad members all knelt on one knee and solemnly performed the oath of allegiance to List. Excitement could be seen on their faces. In fact, such a scene often occurred on Blazing Island, where a knight would often be conferred the title of nobility or promoted to the rank of nobility due to their military exploit. The knight squad was rewarded. List then looked at the faintly trembling moon killer girl, Hippolyta. This skinny native girl's body had yet to fully develop, but she was already quite tall, standing at a little over 1.6 meters. Her skin was the color of wheat, she wore animal skin clothes, and she was barefoot without shoes. Her hair was parted in the middle, reaching her shoulders, and was very black and shiny. There was even a row of feathers in her hair. This was the favorite adornment of moon killer females. The older they were, the more they liked to have feathers of various colors on their heads, forming a beautiful crest. Hippolyta's crest had yet to take shape. However, probably because she was the daughter of a listener, her living conditions were not bad. She was cleaner than most moon killer children, and she also had delicate features. This was especially so for the middle style, which was very interesting. List really wanted to say, "Call me Big Brother from now on, and I'll teach you how to comb your hair in the middle." Of course, he was too embarrassed to say such words, and only smiled as he sized Hippolyta up. He had a good impression of the little girl who had hidden an elf and not killed him. "Are you Hippolyta?" he asked in choppy moon language, which he had recently taken some time to learn. Speaking moon language was not difficult, and the pronunciation skills were traceable. After all, most languages in the legendary continent, including windlass and serpentine, had inherited moon language words. Vartek. The little girl mustered her courage and asked in gibberish. List did not understand. He turned to look at the sorcerer interpreter beside him. Most knight had learned moon language before, but they were not proficient in it. They basically communicated according to the operation manual. Sorcerers who studied moon language were more suitable as interpreters. Your Highness, she asked why you captured her father, her friends, and her family. This is a misunderstanding. I invited them to live in my territory. Life here is far better than in the Luo tribe. You will also start a new life here. List said, and the interpreter translated. The communication was smooth. So don't worry, don't be afraid. You really won't kill us. Yes, we won't kill you. In fact, we have many moon killer people here. They are all from different tribes who came here to start a new life. Then can you let my father and my brother go? Of course. But as a condition of the deal, can you cancel the contract with these elves? List showed a wolf-like grin, showing his patience. He was willing to respect the moon killer people who respected the elves, but not because they were little girls. They are my friends, gifts from my father. Can you not kill them? Hippolyta said nervously. You like them? Yes, I like elves very much. They are very cute and should not be killed. But my father only allowed me to wish for one elf on my birthday. I started wishing when I was 7, and when I was 12, I only wished for 6 elves. The rest were killed. Obviously, the moon killer people of the Luo tribe were still moon killers. It was just that Hippolyta had a good impression of elves. Give them to me. I will take good care of them. Not a single elf will be killed in my territory. They live happily. You will often see elves in the future. They are free and unrestrained. As for you, you should go to school. Chapter 866. Who is the headmaster of the Moon Killer Academy? List asked after Hippolyta was sent away. It's Baron Rick Footprints. Rick, huh? List recalled that Rick was his former classmate at the Knight Academy, who had followed him since he was in the Flower Town. The first time he went to the battlefield, he was seriously injured and almost died. Since then, his body was left with hidden dangers and he began to take the administrative route. Tell Rick to educate Hippolyta well. He is someone I pay close attention to. Understood, Your Highness. With the continuous absorption of the Moonkiller clan, the territory's Moonkiller serfs had already exceeded 200,000 people, and the ancient wizards alone had reached 4,000 people. As for the knight, wizards, and commoners who migrated from the Flame territory, there were less than 20,000 people in total. Such a disparity made the Flame territory's rule very precarious. Although he and Achi were enough to suppress all disturbances in terms of high-end combat strength, but they could not suppress everywhere and still had to rely on the Flame territory to maintain stability. But with the continuous increase of the Moonkiller clan, the Flame territory's control over the Moonkiller clan was bound to decline. The Moonkiller clan was distributed on Flame Island. There were certainly millions of them, and even tens of millions was not impossible. After all, they were spread out in most of the forest corners of Flame Island. As for the number of Flame territories, Flame territory, even if magic gates were opened and immigrants were allowed, it would still be difficult to reach hundreds of thousands in a short time. With the large number of Moonkiller clan and the small number of Flame territory, List felt that he had to adopt a more stable method to control Flame Island. His plan was to assimilate the Moonkiller clan, integrate them into the Knight system, and make them loyal to him. At the same time, he had to divide and disperse the Moonkiller clan. Standing on the castle's balcony, List looked at the sun that was still bright but did not provide much heat. His mind was clear. It is not realistic for everyone to be equal. The difference in levels under the Knight system must be maintained. However, the conflict between the different levels can be resolved through the channels of ascension. Nobles, Flamefolk, and Moonkiller are 3 levels, but each level must have a channel to become a nobleman. His gaze shifted towards the faraway plantation, where a night squad was patrolling. Moonkiller serfs were busy plowing the fields under the leadership of the infernal giants, preparing for the upcoming spring sowing. Especially young Moonkillers like Hippolyta, they could be groomed to become night class. As for the Moonkillers, their generation would be cut off. After banning the killing of sprite worms to produce magic power dust, the Moonkillers would not be any better than the Flame People in terms of magic talent. Of course, the cultivation of Moonkiller Knights still depended on talent. Moonkiller Knights without talent would continue to be serfs. Young people are the true knight candidates of the Burning Legion in the future. They will accept the new concept that I bring and not continue to stick to the rigid knight system. Ongchi, crunchy. The great potato sprite Kutch's shout interrupted List's thoughts and brought him back to reality. He saw Kutch flying towards him with a sprite of the same height. List. Kutch came to the balcony and laughed foolishly. Kutcher, who was captured by the Saint tribe, lived a miserable life. Only when he was rescued by List did he become completely happy. Recently, List had given it a mission to help the newly arrived sprites familiarize themselves with their new life in Firefire Castle. One after another, sprite worms were rescued from the various Moonkiller tribes, but of the greater sprites and lesser sprites, there were only 1 big sprite and 3 small sprites brought by Hippolyta. Above the head of the greater sprite was a small sapling with large leaves. A bunch of bananas hung from the sapling. It was a greater banana sprite. Bananas were a type of fruit that was most loved by the spatula elephant. It could be said that the arrival of the greater banana sprite provided a stable source of food for the spatula elephant. Bobby, say, List. He teased the greater sprite, whose eyes were full of curiosity. Because it had just formed a contract, the greater sprite was still a bit shy with strangers and could not speak in Serpentine. Its name was Bobby. This was the name given by Hippolyta, and List felt that it was good, so he did not change it. Hibo Bobby. Bobby muttered the language it knew, and then, driven by the contract, tried to say, Li Shi Ti. It's List. Kutch corrected him. Li Shi Ti, List. Li Shi Ti. Bobby is so stupid. Kutch sneered and continued to correct him. List Flame, Kutch's List. Bobby seemed to understand the other party's mockery and shouted angrily, Hibo, Bobby. Well, go play on the side. List did not care about Bobby's learning progress. After the sprites' worm stalks were planted, they could do whatever they wanted. There was no point in teaching them. In addition to the banana sprite Bobby, there were 3 other sprites, namely the king flower sprite, the silver fangrass sprite, and the big pom-pom sprite. Among them, the king flower was a parasitic plant, generally parasitizing the roots, stems, and branches of plants, somewhat similar to mushrooms. However, it was a plant with flowers the size of a washbasin and was a magic ingredient. In other words, the king flower sprite was a magic ingredient sprite and was very valuable. The only drawback was that it was not easy to cultivate, as it needed to be parasitized on a large tree. The silver fangrass was an ornamental plant. When its fruit matured, it looked like a silver coin or a small silver fan. The big pom-pom sprite was also an ornamental plant, closely related to the scallions, but not belonging to the same genus. The middle of the plant grew a cylindrical, half-a-person-tall stalk, and the tip of the stalk was a purple scallion, which was very interesting. The value of these 2 sprites had yet to be discovered. In addition, there were 2 sprite worms. So far, more than 40 sprite worms had been rescued from the Moonman tribe, and most of them had not been found to have any value. Coral Island, Flower Town, in a tavern near the dock. 2 guests dressed as merchants sat in the corner of the tavern, whispering, "Did you find out? Did you bring the gold coins?" Don't worry, I won't be short of your money, take it. Hey, with the gold coins, everything is easy. Investigate clearly. The knight returns to Black Horse Island 2 to 3 times a week. The time is not fixed, but the basic pattern is unchanged. The other magician hasn't appeared yet. He's been staying on Flame Island. What is the mount, and what does it do every time? The mount has not been found, but each time it is to transport a batch of goods, sometimes food, which is not easy to find out. And each time, it will rest in Thorn Castle for one night and leave the next day. I dare not ask more, the specific method of transportation is not clear. Continue to inquire, I want to know more about the whereabouts of the knight. Hey, Black Horse Island's household registration management is very strict. I risked being hanged to help you find out information. If you want me to continue to inquire, you have to pay me more. As long as the information is valuable, remember, money is not a problem. A moment later, the two merchants said goodbye, purchased a batch of goods, and left Flower Town. Only one set out for Black Horse Island and the other for Coral City. The merchant who set out for Coral City, after arriving at the dock, immediately wrote a letter and handed it to another merchant to carry all the way to the Eagle Kingdom. Eventually, the letter arrived in a magnificent castle. On the hillside not far from the castle, a bronze dragon was sleeping. The owner of the castle opened the letter, read the contents blankly, and then burned the letter. Sitting in a chair in silence, he whispered softly, "List Flame, the humiliation you have inflicted on me, I will retaliate tenfold, just wait." Chapter 867. This chapter is 100,000 Years of Salted Fish. December, January, and February belonged to winter on Flame Island. Although the plants stopped growing because of the dry and cold climate, it was a rare opportunity for construction. It didn't rain for a long time, and the land was kept dry. Taking advantage of this time, settlements around Infernal City and the Whirlpool River rose from the ground. Tall wooden houses, rocky administrative offices, each settlement was planned with a small town as the goal, waiting for residents to move in. All the towns belonged to List. On Flame Island, which was more than 3 million square kilometers, other than the nobles of the Burning Legion, no other nobles could be enfeoffed here. There were many large and small islands in the archipelago, enough for his followers to be enfeoffed. The merits came too quickly, so the enfeoffment naturally wouldn't be good. Basically, his followers' titles did not correspond to their military exploit. Often, it was List who would forcibly find an excuse to promote his followers and give them military exploit. Everyone knew this, so naturally, they wouldn't care about the barrenness and richness of the territory. For example, Cross Buckthorn was promoted from Viscount to Count after passing through the Great Whirlpool. Such a huge reward already made him overjoyed. Even if he was given a desert as a fief, he wouldn't be able to complain. Riding on the back of the invisible dragon, carrying a chi at the same time, List moved in the material boundary, inspecting his territory. We still lack people. We lack the backbone of the Knight class. Although the Knight Academy has been training young people, it takes time to grow. And time is the biggest enemy in developing Flame Island. The loyalty of the ancient magicians is always a problem, even if a Chi and I are forced to become the Moon Killer Sekis. Sekis were saints. List had a dragon as his companion, so it was natural for him to become a Seki. As a magic shooter, a Chi was the best candidate to become a Seki. But the two of them only became Sekis with their strength. Their appearance was far from the Moon Killer Sekis, so it was impossible for the Moon Killer Sekis to sincerely believe that they were Sekis. Only the ancestors of the Moon Killer Sekis were the Sekis in their hearts. Brother, don't worry, a Chi will help you suppress the ancient magicians. Their magic has fallen behind this era. A sorcerer can rely on a few pieces of magic equipment to fight a great ancient sorcerer. They can't make any waves. A Chi could now enter the material boundary. She was even bolder than Liszt. She didn't take the ancient sorcerer seriously. It was probably because all the sorcerers were sucking up to her so that Achi could deeply understand her influence on the sorcerers as the embodiment of truth walking in the secular world. I'm not worried about them stirring up trouble. I just feel that the development of Blazing Island isn't fast enough. How long will it take for you to master your space elemental incarnation perfectly? Soon, in the next 2 days, Achi replied. The reason why she rode the invisible dragon with Liszt was to familiarize herself with the material boundary and speed up her familiarity with spatial magic. As expected, 2 days later, in late February, Achi finally mastered the spatial elemental incarnation and could enter the material boundary independently at any time. Moreover, together with Liszt, they could ride the invisible dragon and wander in the world outside the material world, feeling the differences of this world. They could also observe and study the natural node. Brother, the preparations for building the magic gate are sufficient. Achi will choose the natural node and build the magic gate. After comparing all the natural nodes near the Flame Islands and the Sapphire Islands, Achi began to enter the long-awaited practical project of the magic transmission array. At present, there were 6 nodes suitable for the opening of the magic gate: Volcanic Crater, Jade Mountain, Reed Marsh, Ruins Entrance, Heart Island and Bone Lake. The first one is to build the Bone Lake Jade Mountain Magic Transmission Array and connect Black Horse Island and Blazing Island. Liszt was excited. The location of these 2 natural nodes was the best, which could directly maximize the convenience of transportation. After all, the Jade Fire Avenue was about to be completed. The construction ability of the Elephant Orders of Chivalry was better than imagined. With continuous running in, the shovel-toothed giant elephants could build 30 kilometers of roads a day. When the time came, Bone Lake was connected to Jade Mountain, and Jade Mountain was connected to Fire City. It would become the main traffic artery for the development of Blazing Island. However, Achi put forward a different opinion. Brother, it is the first time to open a magic transmission array. It is inevitable that there will be accidents and even natural nodes will be destroyed. Achi suggests that we build an unimportant magic transmission array first, accumulate enough experience, and then open the Bone Lake Jade Mountain Magic Transmission Array. I see. Although Liszt did not want to give up, he also understood that what Achi said made sense. It was inevitable to fail the first time. So which one do you think we should build first? Heart Island Reed Magic Transmission Array. First, to verify whether the connection of long-distance natural nodes is feasible. Second, it will not hinder the future trunk of the Magic Transmission Array on Blazing Island. Once it is determined that the Magic Transmission Array is stable and feasible, it can be directly dismantled and a new Magic Transmission Array can be built. Then let's do it this way. You arrange it, I will cooperate. In this way. The tedious and complex construction of the magic gate began. Achi's plan involved a lot of magic materials, including space gems. If it weren't for the 6 space gems, Liszt would have been reluctant to use such precious gems for the establishment of the magic gate. Time passed day by day in the preparation work. February ended and March arrived. The spring rain fell on a large area of Blazing Island, and the spring plowing work was carried out. A large number of seeds brought from Black Horse Island were sprinkled in various plantations opened during the winter. Once the seeds of these plantations germinated, many elves of Thorn Castle could migrate to Firewood Castle. While Liszt was busy, Orders of Chivalry finally built the Jade Fire Avenue to the Jade Mountain, and found the light green gemstone dragon entrenched in the Jade Mountain. Oh my God! A dragon! This is the light green gemstone dragon, the one lost by the Eagle Kingdom. It's on Blazing Island. Quick, report to His Royal Highness. It was Carlo Violet's mount when he was alive. The knight exclaimed one after another. They were deeply shocked by the light green dragon entrenched far away on the mountain, ignoring orders of chivalry. However, Emily, who was riding on the back of the leader of the herd, shouted loudly, "Silence! Captain Emily, this is a light green gemstone dragon." Vernal Ink, who participated in the escort work of orders of chivalry, could not suppress his impulse. "I know." Although Emily's face was young, her expression was serious. "This light green gemstone dragon is the mount of His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness has long become a light green gemstone dragon knight." "Ah! The knight's glory! Incredible! A third dragon! His Royal Highness has already subdued the light green gemstone dragon. Our Royal Highness, who is favored by the knight's glory for life, already has a three-headed dragon." The knight no longer knew how to describe it. They had infinitely elevated the glorious image of their lord. At this moment they still felt that they could not set off the greatness of the Lord. A dragon knight with a three-headed dragon, a lord who was only 20 years old, impressively became a dragon knight with a three-headed dragon. Such an exaggerated achievement could not be described in words. Even Emily, who had already been informed by Liszt and knew of the existence of the light green gemstone dragon, Ethan, was shocked. There seemed to be a flame of worship burning in her bones. Chapter 868. It was Liszt's choice to expose the light emerald dragon. Anyway, the news of the three-headed dragon would be exposed sooner or later. At a time when Flame Island was already in control, there was no harm in exposing it. Moreover, Jade Mountain was the dragon nest of the light emerald gem dragon. Mining here could not avoid the light emerald gem dragon. Moreover, when the spiritual imprint of the light emerald gem dragon was completed, Liszt would try to let Emily get along with the light emerald gem dragon to see if they could work together and become the new dragon knight in the future. The girl was talented and loyal, so she should be vigorously cultivated to share the burden of Liszt. He was only 20 years old, but he had to bear the pressure of a kingdom. It was really not easy. Of course, Emily was only 14 years old this year, and the pressure of becoming a dragon knight was equally great. Even though magic shooter A-Chi was already 44 years old, she was still not an adult siren according to the age of a siren. The Nation of Fire was a country established by young people. "Commander Emily, is this really His Highness's dragon mount?" Vernal Ink couldn't believe what he was seeing. Of course. Emily held her head high, feeling an inexplicable sense of pride. Every time Liszt made an incredible achievement, she felt that she would go crazy with excitement. And she remembered very clearly that night, the great Sir Lord stroked her hair and said to her, "Grow up quickly, Emily, you are my candidate for Dragon Knight." Ethan, the light emerald gem dragon, was the dragon that the Sir Lord had chosen for her. She just had to wait for her to grow up, pass Ethan's test, be recognized, and finally succeed in riding the dragon. "I will definitely become a dragon knight and follow His Highness." Emily looked at Ethan lying on the distant mountain, and her heart became more and more fiery. Thunder chi overflowed in her meridians, as if it was about to rush out and vent. She tried to adjust her breathing, but still could not suppress the restlessness of her chi, like boiling water that was constantly boiling. "Novad, I leave orders of chivalry to you. Continue to flatten the land." She hurriedly ordered her deputy and jumped off the leader of the elephant herd. With a few flashes, he arrived at the nearby Jade Firewood Avenue. She stood still on the wide open ground and pulled out the red-blood sword that she always carried with her. This sword was Liszt's sword in the past. The ruby's effect was to amplify combat aura. After being melted down and recast by the Iron Knight, it became more compatible with her lightning combat aura. Although it was only a gemstone weapon, it was Emily's treasure. At this moment, she grasped the red-blood sword and crazily unleashed her chi's secret technique, venting the restless chi in her meridians. Gradually, a special kind of change occurred in her meridians. It was as if all the fighting energy had risen into another form, making her feel that her body was constantly becoming lighter. Then, he suddenly leaped. He had already soared more than 10 meters into the air. He hovered in the air for a moment before landing easily. An irrepressible surprise appeared on her delicate and immature face. She instantly realized that her fighting energy had been reborn. It had upgraded from mid-level fighting energy to high-level fighting energy. She had become a Sky Knight. Boom! The new high-level lightning combat aura gushed out. Her whole body was like a sharp arrow, flying 100 meters into the air. Even if it was just an upgraded fighting energy, she could still forcibly control it, allowing her body to fly steadily for short distances. Day and night of practice had allowed her to master fighting energy to a terrifying degree. She crossed the air, and then fell hard around the giant elephant orders of chivalry, leaving 2 footprints on the hard ground. Her legs bent and her sword on the ground. A cloud of dust flew up. The Knight of the Orders of Chivalry turned their heads one after another, alarmed by the noise she made. Then they saw Emily descending from the sky. Some knight were still in a daze, while other knight had already woken up. Captain Emily advanced to Sky Knight? Vernal was the first to rush over. Captain Emily, have you really advanced to Sky Knight? He felt incredible, even more incredible than meeting a dragon. Although the light green gem dragon was sudden, it had been a year since the Eagle Kingdom had lost it, and everyone had some guesses in their hearts. However, how old was Emily? She was only 14 years old. An elite Earth Knight at the age of 14 was already exaggerated enough. She had also been appointed as the captain of the Orders of Chivalry. She had long been a figure that could not be ignored. Everyone's view of Emily was that she was a genius and a new star with a promising future. The future would belong to Emily. However, she didn't have to wait until the future. Right now, Emily had become a Sky Knight. When List became a Sky Knight at the age of 17, he broke the historical record of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and became the youngest Sky Knight. Countless people were shocked and envious. Who would have thought that Emily had now broken List's record by 3 years? Yes, I'm now a Sky Knight. Emily turned over and rode on the leader of the elephant herd. She wanted to continue flying in the sky and feel the joy of becoming a Sky Knight, but she restrained her emotions well. Willpower had always been her greatest talent. You're only 14 years old this year. Knight's glory favors you, Captain Emily. You're even more talented than His Highness. Vernal's tone was still shocked. Emily raised her brows. His Highness' talent is not something you and I can imagine. I'm just constantly chasing after His Highness back. Captain Vernal, work hard. After saying that, she rode the leader of the elephant herd back to the giant elephant orders of chivalry and immediately gave the order to be silent. She was not List. Although she had advanced, she could still restrain the urge to show off. If it were List, he would probably fly around the giant elephant orders of chivalry for a whole day. Looking at the back of the girl riding the elephant, Vernal shook his head slightly, unable to let it go for a long time. He thought that the young dragon knight lord he followed was already a legend. Who would have thought that the girl knight he worked with was also about to become a legend? Becoming a Sky Knight at the age of 14 was almost impossible even for the kingdoms on the continent and the Dragon Knight candidates. Moreover, it was a female Sky Knight. When the girl's back merged into the giant elephant orders of chivalry, he looked at the light green gem dragon in the distance. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and thought of a possibility. Emily is a genius knight that His Highness has carefully nurtured. Then, could she be a Dragon Knight candidate of the Fire Kingdom? Although she is a woman, who can guarantee that she won't become a Dragon Knight after becoming a Sky Knight at the age of 14? This idea could no longer be suppressed. Vernal knew that it was really possible. As long as List was willing, Emily had enough time to get used to the light green gem dragon. As he thought about it, a slightly wretched smile appeared on his face. Your Excellency Achilles, High Mage. Captain Emily, Dragon Knight. I suddenly feel that the Fire Kingdom doesn't need to worry about the air at all. His Highness should like to cultivate this kind of thing. TSK. List, who did not know that his followers were silently criticizing him, looked at the smoke serpentines that appeared in front of him. Mission completed. Reward. Sky Knight Emily. Oh! The Jade Firewood Path has been completed. Is my little Emily finally going to advance? A 14-year-old female Sky Knight, my full nurturing of her was not in vain. Emily's growth was surprising, but as the smoke serpentines changed and he saw the new mission content, his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 869. Mission. Your routine is being spied on. The danger hiding in the shadows is approaching step by step. Even as a Dragon Knight, there is no guarantee that you will not be besieged. Fighting is the best solution. Please resolve the crisis in the shadows. Reward. Trace of the Ogre. The reward of Trace of the Ogre did not make List change his expression. It was the content of the mission that made him change his expression. Someone is investigating me. The shadow crisis is approaching. In the Azure Sea, the only one that can pose a threat to me must be the Eagle Kingdom. I killed a Dragon Knight and lost a dragon. The Eagle royal family will never let it go. And Alonso Cactus is here. He quickly returned to normal, and there was only calmness in his eyes. Besieging the Dragon Knight, these people are up to something. Although the crisis had begun to ambush, he was not too worried. As early as the war between the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Kingdom, he had already considered the possibility of the Eagle Kingdom accumulating strength to deal with him. If the dragon was not lost, maybe the Eagle Kingdom would suffer a loss. But the dragon was lost. This was a big deal, and even the king could not swallow it. Every dragon represented a huge amount of resources. Investigating my routine and preparing to gang up on me. A new round of dragon slaying is about to take place. The power of fate has already felt the other side's restlessness. This battle is inevitable. List was a Dragon Knight who was going to directly establish a kingdom. He was upright and sharp, and he would not admit defeat at this time. Besides, there was no reason to admit defeat. There was the magic shooter He in the sea, and he was in an invincible position. There was the invisible dragon bard in the sky. If he escaped into the material boundary, what could the Dragon Knight do? Even the little fire dragon Leo did not need to appear. He could escape this dragon-slaying battle. On the basis of being undefeated, I will expand the battle and let the Eagle Kingdom regret coming to take revenge on me. He kept thinking about how to deal with it. In fact, with the invisible dragon bard around, he could totally catch a Dragon Knight off guard and kill it. According to the existing intelligence, even if the Eagle Kingdom had a way to stabilize the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and withdraw the Dragon Knight and dragons from the border, it was impossible to withdraw all the Dragon Knight and dragons. According to the possibility, the Eagle Kingdom could pay a certain price and transfer about 3 Dragon Knight and 2 dragons. There were a total of 8 dragons in the Eagle Kingdom, among which there were 5 Dragon Knights. The White Iron Dragon Knight, the Bronze Dragon Knight, the Amethyst Dragon Knight, the Yellow Dragon Knight, the Lead Dragon Knight, the Silver Dragon, and the other White Iron Dragon and the Brass Dragon. The 5 vassal states had 5 dragons, 2 of which were Dragon Knight, the Copper Dragon Knight, the Crimson Sapphire Dragon Knight, and the Grey Iron Dragon, the Pink Sapphire Dragon, and the Gold Emerald Dragon. Among them, the White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex White Iron guarded the border of the Blast Furnace Castle and could be dispatched. The Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Ferry guarded the border of the Iron and Steel Ridge and could be dispatched. The Copper Dragon Knight, Lloyd Copper had the best relationship with the Eagle royal family and could be dispatched. In addition, the silver dragon, the symbol of the royal family, and the gray iron dragon of the vassal states could also be dispatched. Dragons were the existence that guarded the fate of a country and could not be mobilized easily. The cost of dispatching them was huge, and could even be the fuse to start a border war. If the Eagle Kingdom really gathered a luxurious lineup of 3 Dragon Knight and 2 dragons, it would probably be a magnificent feat that would shake the country. If we win, everything will be fine. Maybe eating me will allow the Eagle Kingdom to restore its national strength in one fell swoop. But if we lose, the Eagle Kingdom will at least lose a layer of skin. If you dare to come, you must be prepared to lose a layer of skin. List's eyes were cold and fearless. Without much hesitation, he went directly to the crater of the volcano of Doomsday and called Leo out of the volcanic magma. The war is about to start. During this time, you stay in my body and be ready to fight. Roar. Leo did not refuse. Although he was attached to the temperature of the crater, he was also eager to fight. As an evil dragon, how could he be afraid of fighting? Back at the construction site of the reed marsh, he said to Achi, "First, stop the construction of the magic gate. Achi, I need you to stay in line with me during this time. There is a dragon-slaying battle waiting for me." Achi understands. Achi will protect my brother, Achi said, clenching her fist. Well, I believe you. Immediately, the two rode the invisible dragon bard and directly entered the world outside the material world, shuttling from the natural node of the Bone Lake to Black Horse Island. List quickly summoned Mary Dawn Daybreak and Xavier Cow Dung at the Thorn Castle. Your Royal Highness. Mary, who looked like a young man, no longer showed off her sexy figure. She became the leader of the Blood Servants and one of List's eyes, with a high position of power. In the Flame Territory, she selected a lot of talented teenagers and planned to expand the number of vampires. Mary, I want you to immediately lead the Blood Servants to investigate the movements of the Dragon Knight and dragons of the Eagle Kingdom and its vassal states, focusing on Alex, Alonso, Lure, as well as the Silver Dragon and the Gray Iron Dragon. Mary will find out the movements of these Dragon Knight and dragons for your Royal Highness. Time must be fast. Just know the general movements, no need for details. As you wish, your Royal Highness. List ordered Xavier. Your task is to find out the movements of the Sapphire family, especially the Grand Duke and his Sapphire Dragon. It was difficult to judge the position of the Sapphire family, so he did not consider joining forces with the Sapphire Grand Duke in this dragon-slaying battle. He did not like to find people to cooperate with him if he could solve it on his own. People who he did not trust enough would betray him at any time. Xavier bowed and replied, "Yes, Your Royal Highness. Are you prepared for the traces of rat activity in the territory? The suspicious rats are under our surveillance, and part of the information was deliberately released by me. Basically, we can ensure that everything is under control." Very well, then continue to reveal my schedule to these rats. Remember, it is a regular and fixed schedule for a period of time. And I also want you to spread the news to these rats that I often go back and forth to the Dodo Island. There is a volcano there, which is Leo's place of practice. List decided to take the initiative to set up the battlefield and adopt the method of fishing. No one knew that he could rely on the power of fate to avoid danger in advance, which was the most valuable thing to take advantage of. Xavier did not ask for the reason and directly accepted the order. Understood. So, the two eyes, vampire and rat, went on with their orders. List did not stop at all. He directly crossed the natural node with a chi and arrived at the Island of Souls. From the Island of Souls, they sneaked toward the Kingdom of Eagle. He wanted to find some natural nodes on the coast of the Kingdom of Eagle, especially the flight route of the Dragon Knight. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Since the Kingdom of Eagle dared to launch a dragon-slaying battle, they had to pay a heavy price. On the battlefield, List would certainly not be able to beat the other party in a group fight. What he had to do was to use the invisible dragon to deal with the opponent and turn the dragon-slaying battle into a farce. When the Kingdom of Eagle knew that they could not catch List, they would definitely retreat. Then, on the way of retreat, it would be an opportunity for the invisible dragon to assassinate. Chapter 870. The Flower Town's Wharf Tavern. Two merchants were sitting together, the same two as the last time. This time, there was new information about the contents of the transaction. I have ascertained the information you wanted. It took a lot of effort to bribe a servant of Thorn Castle. That knight always transports supplies to the Dodo Island. The Dodo Island? That's right, it is an island in the north. I have brought you the nautical chart. How many gold coins do you want to pay me? How about 10? 20. Don't be greedy, 15. 17. This isn't just for me. I spent a lot of money to bribe that servant from Thorn Castle. Will the cat be out of the bag? Rest assured, that servant is an old member of the castle. No one will suspect him. After the other side agreed to pay 17 gold coins, the merchant explained the situation of the Dodo Island in full detail, including the information about the volcanic crater, the forest of skulls, and so on, as well as the knight practicing cultivation on the island. If someone investigated, they would find that the Dodo Island was indeed under construction. However, it was not a practice area, but a small town, where volcanic ash would be mined and used to produce cement. It only took half a month for this news to reach Alonso Celeste's hands. In order to deliver the news in time, he had arranged for vampires to once again lurk in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. However, in order to avoid being discovered, the Black Knight family's vampires acted very cautiously, concealing the fluctuations of blood magic. The family already knew that a group of vampires had defected and sought refuge under List. The Dodo Island. Alonso called for his trusted knight, arranged for the Eagle Knight to separately inform His Highness Alex, Archduke Neuer, and Duke Piero that the fire-extinguishing operation has officially begun. On April 3rd, we will assemble at the Sapphire Hot Spring Island. The Eagle was a mid-level wind-attribute world of Warcraft. It was not strong in battle, but it was very fast. Carrying the beacon bestowed by Alonso, the Eagle Knight quickly set sail from Alonso's castle and flew to various parts of the Eagle Kingdom. Looking at the knights disappearing into the horizon, Alonso clenched his fists tightly. His Majesty still trusts me to lead this operation. I will not let him down. List, Flame, you must be very proud right now. You're young and successful, eager to build your country, but you don't know that the old hunter has already laid a trap for you, hee. The layout of the dragon-slaying war usually took a long time. After making all the preparations that he could, List quickly went to the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom and kept looking for natural node. It was a pity that the material boundary here seemed to be more stable than that of the Fire Islands. After searching for more than half a month, he only found 2 natural nodes. One of them was in a place he was familiar with, the Kurong Mountain Iron Mine. The other was between a reef not far from the coastline. It was also a very familiar place. Back then, he met the old siren Izzy here. He called this place the Siren Reef Group. It was a pity that Izzy was not here, and he did not see this charming siren again. I hope these 2 natural nodes happen to be on the return route of the Dragon Knight. Otherwise, I can only try to assassinate them. After all, Bard is still underage. If he is an adult and his strength is at its peak, I can directly go to each Dragon Knight station to assassinate him. The invisible dragon was now only 80 years old, and his battle strength was not strong enough. If he went deep into the enemy's rear to assassinate him, the risk would not be small. Who knew whether these Dragon Knight, which had been passed down for many years, would have countermeasures, such as magic or fighting skills that could seal off space. At present, List's main business idea was to stabilize the situation and not make waves. Soon, he received news from the blood servant. The White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex Whiteiron, who was supposed to be stationed at the border of Blast Furnace Castle, was not in the station and had returned to the capital. Since the daughter of the Eagle King married the younger brother of the Blast Furnace Castle King, Duke of Heisberg, the diplomatic relations between the two countries had become complicated. Under normal circumstances, the kingdoms would not become a family just because of marriage. In fact, in the previous generations, almost all kingdoms had marriage, but they still had to fight. As I expected, Alex was released from the Eagle Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Castle Kingdom. If there is a dragon-slaying battle, he must be one of them. The White Iron Dragon was powerful, and Alex could be said to be the #1 expert in the Eagle Kingdom. There were 2 White Iron Dragons in the Eagle Kingdom. One of them had not found a Dragon Knight, but this dragon had once fought with the Dragon Knight and almost killed the first-generation Sapphire Dragon Knight. Their fierce battle strength was evident. As for Alex, he had even killed an ice dragon and enjoyed the title of Dragon Slayer. List thought for a moment, then let Achi give instructions to Mary Dawn Daybreak through the magic platform. Continue to follow Alex's news. Once he takes action or stays in seclusion, report to me directly. He had a magic platform, letting Mary and other blood servants lurk in the Eagle Kingdom with the magic platform. The speed of news transmission was very fast. Unfortunately, it was not easy to make a magic platform, and the security measures had not been set up yet. In addition, the training of the lurkers was difficult, and the vampires also needed time to develop. Otherwise, they could directly set up an espionage unit and stationed it in the major kingdoms. At present, only some blood servants could hold a magic platform. As the blood servants continued to take their positions, the information continued to come in. Alonso left the station on his dragon. Grand Duke Luer of the Grand Duchy of Red Iron did not show up for a few days. Duke Piero of the Duchy of Grey Iron also closed his door, and Prince Alex also closed his door. There were also people who found the silver dragon leaving the dragon nest. Then there was news that the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom once again had friction on the border. The whole month of March seemed very ordinary, but the movements of the Eagle Kingdom were known by List. If it were not for the smoke mission warning in advance, these movements would not be surprising at all. However, under the close observation of List, these movements all became abnormal. It is basically certain that the 3 Dragon Knight, Alonso, Alex, and Neuer will participate in the dragon-slaying battle. The Grey Iron Dragon of the Duchy of Grey Iron will also participate in the war, and there is also a silver dragon. The clues of the other Dragon Knight and dragons are still unclear. So, if they want to ambush me, where will they choose? List looked at the map of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and thought that the Dragon Knight must gather before launching an attack. So somewhere between Dodo Island and Black Horse Island must be the attack site. This was the battlefield that List took the initiative to arrange. With this sea as the center point, the surrounding islands may become an ambush site. The most likely place should be Hot Spring Island. The Earl of Hot Spring Island is an old earl. I don't know if he will be involved. The mice I sent to investigate may find some traces, and these other islands may also become ambush sites. The Eagle Kingdom has been operating for many years. Who knows if there are any noble lords who have been instigated here? During the dragon-slaying battle in the Aquamarine Sea, the light green sapphire dragon knight, Carl Law Violet, unexpectedly appeared. The Sapphire Grand Duke guessed that there was a traitor among his followers, to provide a place for Carl Law to stay. However, no trace of the traitor was found. After all, there were many deserted islands in the Sapphire Archipelago where the Dragon Knight could stay. List touched his chin, and his eyes seemed to see the threads of fate constantly trembling. Even the Sapphire Grand Duke will reach an agreement with the Eagle Kingdom to work together to get me to pave the way for Anthony? He included the Sapphire Grand Duke in the dragon-slaying battle. Prepare for the worst. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.